Right, good morning everybody and welcome to this special council meeting to go through submissions from the Forrester Heights engagement. So just getting on to that particular formal agenda. Do we have an apology from Councillor Halaleli? Do we have any other apologies? None. Would someone like to move we accept that? Councillor Timdale, seconded. Councillor Williams, thank you. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is going through the 900 plus submissions over the next the next 4 hours and then again tomorrow. So there'll be live streaming on all of those. The verbal submissions will be getting held as those people come in, which is basically through until I think around 2 o'clock tomorrow. And then we'll be attending to the non-verbals as we go through. There are a number of ones who were intending to come and speak to their submissions, and they'll be they are no longer coming, so we'll address those as we get any gaps in this morning's run through. As indicated to you, once we get into the non-verbals, there are a lot of them. What I'll be doing is taking them 10 at a time and saying which numbers submissions they are and getting you to raise any particular issues or comments that you might have for any of those. So all going well, we will be done by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon as far as hearing the submissions and raising any particular concerns that we want to be addressed in a report, which will come back to us at the stage scheduled to come back to a council meeting on the 28th of June. So it's a bit of time before that, but it's going to give time for us to have make sure we're responding well to any of the issues, and that the staff report is the CE's report will be covering off issues, whatever they might be, and whichever way they might be going. So, so that's pretty much it as far as how we go through those. Our first speaker is due in a couple of minutes, but I think you've got on your list, you've got marked on the who's speaking at each time, and in the what is it, sixth column, if they are no longer coming, they're now listed as non-verbal rather than saying that they're verbal. So we will get onto those in due course. So do I have are there any questions or comments at the moment? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fascinating few days reading. Two things that I'd just like to draw your attention to. I believe that probably 35, 36 of the submissions are people from outside the district. Wonderful that they're involved, but I tend to think if they're not resident or not ratepayers. And the second thing, I was most concerned at the tenor of only a minor number of submissions, but I know I've only been on council for 12 months, but the allegations that were made were basically quite libelous, and certainly I've never seen any of the behaviour that they allude to, and I find it totally unacceptable.
Thank you. Yeah, there was certainly some that I had some, took issue with, because people basically telling lies on their submissions, and they are libelous. There's no doubt about that. I don't think they should have been published, but they have been. As far as abuse goes, I mean, we have to take that on the chin sometimes, and abuse is one thing, and people just calling you names or having a particular opinion of you is one thing, but to actually libel people, I think that was probably going beyond the pale. So yeah, we'll deal with those ones as we come through to them, but yeah, it wasn't great that there was, yeah, a bit sad there was so much anger in the situation. Councillor Tavendale.
I just think to respond to Councillor Thompson's concerns around out of town, I think we can all make our own decisions around that when it comes to deliberations. But certainly there's a theme that came through from those ones that I found, which is worth us being aware of.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I think the lie should be called out, but a process question or procedural question that I'd like to ask you now. There's one submission that quotes you. And rather than ask the submitter, would you be happy for me to ask you to comment on what you are supposed to have said as reported by that submitter?
Yes, absolutely. I can comment on all sorts of fictions that are in there. Anyway, okay, we've got our first couple of submitters here. So, Ania, we've got you. Just come up to this one over here, just there. Yep, one of those seats. Yep. So welcome along, and it's really good to see so many submissions from young people, notably Oamaru Intermediate School. So as the Deputy Mayor, yeah, she did mention your name. So, but no, thank you very much for encouraging young people to take part in this. It's an important aspect of democracy and a good lesson in civics along the way. So, it's good for us to get as well in real context. Yeah. No, thank you. So, Ania, so welcome along. Thank you very much for making your submission. So, we'll let you, Jim, she's got instructions. Just let her, she knows what she's doing. Okay. Yeah, you can take your mask off. We'll be able to hear you better and with that. So anyway, when you're ready to go, push the button on the microphone and away we go.
Good morning, members of the Waitaki District Council. My name is Ania Smith and I'm here to convince you on why Forrester Heights should be sold. First of all, the money earned from selling the land to a developer could be used to help improve Oamaru. We could use it to make a reserve in the north end, since majority of our reserves are already in the south end. We could also use it to help build the event centre or pay off debt, which is a must. We would even be using the land for its intended purpose this way, which is another plus. The developer would be making these houses at their expense too, meaning there are no costs for the council, which would add financial strain that we don't need. Secondly, all new houses will attract new families to Oamaru, and every homeowner will pay rates, giving us even more money to help fund things in our community. If all 27 lots get sold, the council could earn about $69,444 per month. That's $833,328 a year. More people moving to Oamaru also increases the money that circulates around our community. If all the houses were sold to families of 3 to 4, then we would have about 95 more people in Oamaru. Finally, Forrester Heights is not an ideal piece of land to build a reserve on at any rate. It is steep, dry and ugly, if I'm being honest with you. We already have enough reserves to go round with the public gardens, the Glen Eden Reserve or the Queen's Crescent Reserve. Cape Warnborough is also very close to Forrester Heights and holds 8 kilometres of biking or walking tracks. Forrester Heights is very small compared to Cape Warnborough and wouldn't make much of a difference to the current size. It's clear to see that selling Forrester Heights is the best option financially and for our community, because we already have many reserves to use, all new houses built will pay rates, and the money from selling this piece of land will be able to help fund other things to better our community or help us out of debt. Thank you for listening to my speech. I hope I have convinced you of the correct option of selling Forrester Heights.
Thank you very much, Ania, and it's a very comprehensive submission, so thank you. So I'll ask councillors if you've got any questions. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Ania, just one. In your written submission, you say that we would get roughly $50,000 a year in rates if the 27 sections were sold. But I think I heard you give us another figure this morning. What was the figure you gave us this morning, please?
The figure I gave you was $833,328 a year. $3,328.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions. So thank you very much for coming in. It's really appreciated. Okay, next we've got James Sol. So welcome to you, James.
So can I take my mask off?
Yeah.
Hello, my name is James Sol. I'm from a family of 3. I live with my parents and 2 dogs. I strongly believe that you as the council should build a cafe or restaurant that would be leased out to a business that wants to use it on Forrester Heights. The many reasons for this will follow. To begin with, the location of Forrester Heights is ideal, whether it be for a casual coffee or a delightful dinner. Its closeness to Cape Wombrah will also bring in people that have seen it while walking or biking and decided to have a coffee or other drink. The Mariner Suites that are just down the road will also bring in holiday goers that don't want to travel far to have dinner or lunch. Although not just out-of-towners will go to this restaurant or cafe, people that live on the South Hill would likely go there too. Personally, I love the view from the Cape, and if I could sit there enjoying the view while drinking a hot chocolate, it would be totally awesome. Now, although that's just my opinion, I'm sure others would share it too. To expand even more on my first matter, I would like to point out that the view would bring in more than just tourists. It would also bring in foodies that would post the view and the meals all over social media, therefore possibly making it become a really iconic part of eating in Oamaru. It is also very close to the harbour, and people could see the penguins coming ashore and be inspired to go to see them the next day at the penguin colony, boosting the income there too. The next point I would like to make is that leasing the building out to an external business would bring in income as well. As you know, a lease of the building would expire after a while, so it would then bring in more and more income over time. It would also open new non-specialist jobs for people that need them. This could mean waiters, bartenders, or even cleaners could get a new job, therefore boosting the economy in Oamaru all round. However, I am aware that a restaurant or cafe would never be able to take up the whole area of Forrester Heights. For this reason, I believe that we should also put in a reserve around this restaurant or cafe. This way, many more community members would be happy by your decision and choose to vote for you as the councillors and mayor. My family and I are very active people and would use any walking tracks that were made around the cafe or restaurant and most definitely go to the cafe or restaurant afterwards. I'm sure many other families in the area would agree that they would use both the tracks and the restaurant or cafe often too. To sum up, I am sure that a restaurant or cafe that would be leased out with a reserve surrounding it would be the best option to put on Forrester Heights. It would create jobs for those who need them, bring in money via the lease that the potential business owners would need to pay, and also create an all-round great place to go to eat and drink. I hope you will all consider my proposal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, James, and quite an entrepreneurial speech that you've given. You consider running a cafe yourself? Think of the free hot chocolates.
Yeah, probably.
Thank you. So, councillors, any questions for James? No? Very thorough. So thank you very much. And yeah, really good to have you giving your thoughts here today. Okay, councillors. So the next one was Mana Fitalau. He's not able to attend today. So we should have Gemma next. So just wait for a wee moment while Yep. Okay, so Gemma is here. So we'll just go to submission number 4. Right, welcome along. So Gemma, you're up next.
And Gemma has brought Elliot to Shed's presentation.
Okay, right. So dual presenters. That's great. Right. So just when you're ready to go, push the button on the microphone, and away you go.
Good morning, Waitaki District Council.
Oh, if you want to take the mask off, you are allowed while you're sitting down.
I'm Gemma Aker, and I'm Elliot Flanagan. We're here to talk to you about why a billboard for advertising in a bike track would be a great idea and better for the environment. Moving on. Would you like to see houses 2 to 3 stories high on Forrester Heights? Would you like your views ruined? Well, building houses or any kind of building on Forrester Heights would ruin the beautiful view of the harbour and would ruin the environment with the smell of gas. How would you feel about that? We already know that people living in the houses would get a great view, but wouldn't you like to see the view yourself? To sit down and enjoy a picnic once in a while without houses and parked cars ruining your view? The view from Forrester Heights is amazing, as we all know, but having the houses built would ruin the view and destroy the peace and quiet we have there. The view is overall perfect, except if you were to look to the opposite side of the ocean, you would see the oil company known as McEwen's and Scott's, which are planted in the middle of a pebbled oval road for parking. Having Scott's down there is a bonus, but if we think about it, if people were to live up there, they would have to deal with the smell of gas and seaweed, which smells horrible. As for the billboard, we could use it for advertising. Renting it would be around $500 to $800 to use for a day, and digital advertising is about $1,200 to $15,000 monthly. All the money could go towards future projects, the sports centre, the council's debt, and a lot of other things that are needed. On to the following statement. Do you like going on bike rides or going outside with your family? Well, having a bike track would be a great idea and would be great for Forrester Heights. Forrester Heights is currently a patch of dead grass, and keeping it that way would be a place where most people wouldn't want to go. So we think that Forrester Heights should get new grass grown instead of leaving it in the state it is now. The natural landscape would stay mostly the same, and having a bike track there would be a great way to have fun and spend time with your family and friends, also keeping fit and learning new skills.
As for helping the environment, if houses and roads were planted there would be loud car sounds and the smell of gas, and you don't exactly know who lives there. In my opinion, I don't think any of that is good for the environment, and I hope you agree with that too. Think about all the nature you could be killing to have and make houses on Forrester Heights, and think of all the cons and pros. When we think about it, we think of houses,
Places for people to live,
for pros, but for cons, we think fires,
gas smells,
loud noises,
ruined views.
and a lot more. I'm sure you understand what I mean.
In conclusion, having a bike track and a billboard would be a great idea because you're still making money and having fun at the same time as being outdoors.
And it's way better than any houses because it's better for the environment. So I hope you can consider thinking about this. Thank you for listening to our opinion.
And thank you both for your thoughts on that. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Wallstein.
Yes, thank you, young ladies. Very great presentation. Well done. And but just a question on on the bike track idea. It's quite steep on Forrester Heights. Do you think you could put a track up there that people could ride on without coming to a stop?
Well, I think it's a good idea because the people who want to get really fit can have a good hill to ride up and down. Yeah.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor Churchill. Thank you. And thanks to the school. When you go back to your class, just give them all a hug and tell them they're all fantastic because these submissions are terrific. You worry about losing the view, but you want to have a billboard that's going to earn $15,000 a month or $180,000 a year. Won't that have to be so big that it might damage the view anyway?
Well, if we do get like a billboard, it would go like at the top of the hill, so then it wouldn't ruin like the view.
Yeah.
Take that, Councillor Hopkins. Any other questions? Now, thank you both for coming along and taking valuable time off your school work to be here. It's great to have submissions from you and your colleagues. So as Councillor Hopkins did say, go back and say that we thought you were really wonderful. So thank you very much for coming in. Right, councillors, the next one should be submission number 5. I'll just get confirmation that that person's here. Yes. I think there's the sheep yards are operating out there, sorting out who the next speaker is. Okay, so as I said, there's a number of the non-verbals, and so just yeah, keep note of those, but we'll come back to them when we've got a decent amount of time gap. So on the last page of the list that you've given, there should be at the top of that all of the list of all the numbers that we do need to go back to. Just once we do get on to non-verbals, I'll be referring to what appendix are in, attachment, and that'll be the easiest way to get to those is the small page arrows across at the bottom of your page to get to the particular one, and then whatever page number within that. Yeah.
Little ones between PDFs. The next one's not waiting for our order.
Okay, yeah, there might be. Okay, thought indication was that Harriet's out there, but she might be being brought up. So what we'll do is we'll go back to number 3, which was Mana's submission. Just ask if there's any comments on that one. Councillor Tavendale.
Just he's one of, I guess, quite a few that have mentioned an adventure park or something along those lines.
Yeah, there's been a few mentions of luges and so on, so yeah, one there. Okay.
One thing that did surprise me about that I would have asked him was just where I'm not challenging it, but I was interested. He makes the point that in 2021, 12.4% of 15 to 24-year-olds in the Waitaki region were unemployed. And fascinating piece of research. I was just interested in the source for that particular statistic.
Yeah, it sounds about right. That's certainly where the Mayor's Task Force for Job Funding is being aimed at, is those younger people. Right, so I think we've got Harriet with us now. So we'll go to submission number 4. Sorry, 5. Yes. So welcome along, Harriet. Good to have you here. So just when you're ready to go, push the button and away you go.
Hello and good morning, members of the Waitaki District Council. I'm Harriet Carter-Trotman and I'm here today to talk about the reasons I believe that Forrester Heights should be built on. The benefits of constructing on Forrester Heights are better for the future of Oamaru. As most of us know, housing costs have risen and it is getting increasingly harder to buy an affordable house. By making the endowment land of Forrester Heights into building plots, we will help people both find a house to live in and increase the income of Oamaru's rates in one go. The rates money from the Forrester Heights houses will help create and refurbish the many tourist attractions of Oamaru and Waitaki. And if the tourists decide to move here, there will be more houses for them to reside in, therefore raising the income from the rates, therefore allowing us to build more houses, create more facilities, and pay off more debts. I naturally have concerns about Forrester Heights, specifically the view. Right above Forrester Heights is Lookout Point. If the houses in Forrester Heights were built too tall, the view from Lookout Point would be obstructed, which would lead to complaints from the community. I know
that the wider community, including me, would appreciate a height restriction placed on the houses. These are my reasons why I believe Forrester Heights is better off as housing plots. The best solution for the future is building, and many of us can see that. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, I think we all agree that the views from Lookout Point are very important and need to be protected. So appreciate you reiterating that. Councillors, any questions? No? You've stunned them all into silence. So not an easy task, but thank you very much for coming along, Harriet. It's much appreciated. Next up, councillors, we've got, I think, Will. Yep. So Will Jukes, submission number 6. So welcome along, Will. Good to have you here. And when you're ready to go, push the button and go for it.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Will Jukes, and I strongly believe that Forrester Heights should be turned into a reserve. My family and I love the outdoors, and so do many other families in Oamaru. Currently, we're trying to build our community and boost our economy. Making Forrester Heights a reserve is an ideal way to do this. Firstly, everyone can enjoy a reserve. Families can head up there to spend an afternoon. People can go running or walking, or new mountain biking tracks could be built there. Mountain biking tracks can help people improve their skills, as well as helping to put Oamaru on the national mountain biking radar. And easy access to running and walking tracks can motivate people to get fit. Also, for those less mobile, the priceless, iconic view from the Lookout Point will still be able to be appreciated. This way, everyone in the community can enjoy Forrester Heights. Secondly, Oamaru should be known as an outdoors type of place. Cape Wombrah, the reservoir, and the Oamaru Public Gardens are all widely enjoyed by a range of people in our little seaside town. It's better for the whole community to have a place to enjoy, rather than a select few people having a lovely view. Flash modern houses would also ruin the view from down at Friendly Bay. Besides, do we really want Oamaru to be known as a modern housing estate for people with money to spend? Oamaru is already a great family-friendly place with parks and reserves, so adding another one would give more opportunities to encourage families to get out of the house and enjoy nature. It would also add to Oamaru's family-friendly reputation throughout New Zealand. Thirdly, turning Forrester Heights into a reserve would free up more space to plant native plants and trees, such as totara, kanuka, and kowhai, and give them a new place to flourish. Geckos and lizards could find a home under the rocks, and endemic birds like the piwakawaka, korimako, and tui could spend their days flitting around in the trees. The first settlers in New Zealand, the Māori, have strong cultural connections with the trees and the animals, and believe that it is important that we protect our land from inappropriate land use, which we would be preventing by turning Forrester Heights into a reserve. In addition, planting trees would help prevent erosion. Native species could have a new place to thrive, and people can have the opportunity to learn more about them. In conclusion, it is highly important that we turn Forrester Heights into a reserve, because it will help reinforce Oamaru's reputation as a great family-friendly place, both locally and nationally. This way, everyone will win, because our native birds will have a new habitat, endemic trees can flourish, the beautiful view from the Lookout Point can still be enjoyed, and people in the community can spend time together in the beautiful Forrester Heights Reserve. Whakawhitai koe mei te whakarongo. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming and speaking. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Will. One of the exciting things I think about Waitaki is that we're working towards being a very inclusive and caring community. So do you think when you talk about rich people and flash houses, that maybe we're allowed to care for people that have worked hard and got the money to build a big house?
Yes, I'm all right for that, but it depends if it's in a place where other people can also enjoy it, then it kind of ruins it for everyone else too. If it's somewhere out in the country where not many people go or drive by, then it's okay, I think.
Thank you for that. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Will. You sound like you've got an awesome outdoorsy family that likes to get out there and enjoy everything. So how much time do you and your family spend at Cape Bombrow and all the awesome tracks that are up there now?
Pretty often, yep. Mostly a few times a week we head up there, do mountain biking, walking, yep.
And one last one, Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, hi, Will. Thanks for your talk. Very interesting. But I was going to ask, mountain biking, there's lots of mountain biking tracks on the Cape now. Do you think you really need some more mountain bike tracks on Forrester Heights too? Because it's pretty steep on Forrester Heights.
Yeah, it is. Sorry. Yeah, there is, but it would be kind of good to have like a track that's sort of nice and easy to get from the Cape or the Lookout Point down to like King George Park, just so people can use that instead of having to take the road.
Very good.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much. As with all your colleagues, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and speak to us on this. And it's really appreciated getting your views. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, that we need to be thinking about the future when we make decisions like this. So having so many young people come and actually speak about it, because, you know, we all hope that we've got some future left in us, but you guys have got a bit more probably. So thank you very much for coming in.
Eunice doesn't want me here, so I'll be waiting there.
Okay.
See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. Okay, so we've got Eunice coming in next for submission number 7. Hey, Eunice. Right, so welcome along. Great to have you make a submission, and really good for you to come in and speak to it. So we're looking forward to hearing from that. So just as soon as you're ready, just push the button and away you go.
Hello, my name is Eunice, and I am here to talk to you about the correct decision regarding the Forrester Heights land. And that correct decision is selling the land for many reasons. Those reasons are logical and beneficial for the future of Oamaru and for generations to come. Wanting to turn Forrester Heights into a reserve is, to put it frankly, a very naive way of thinking. First of all, where are we going to get the money? Money is something that Oamaru needs in itself, not only for the Oamaru Event Centre, but for debts, rates, and the benefiting of our town. COVID has shaken up our economy since we are a place that thrives on tourism. So why would we spend even more when we're already in an economic crisis? You could take out another loan, but that will open up a new problem, adding on to the mountain of debt that we have at the moment. Okay, how about a fundraiser? But how many people want to give up their money for a reserve? How many people want to use a new reserve? How much money will fundraising make? Not a lot, at least not enough. One question that we should be asking ourselves a lot is, should we really be spending even more money on a reserve that people may not even use? Look at the natural areas that we currently have. How much are they actually used? Yes, there are the select few people who come there every now and then, but it's not enough to justify adding another to Oamaru at the current moment, while we don't have the funds or the guarantee that people will use the space. Look at Cape Bombrow, the public gardens, the Alps to Ocean Track. These are all valuable natural spaces that we have, and they should not be taken for granted. We don't have to sell all the land, but the land that we do sell will help us in the future. One word, economy. If a person can afford $1 million house, they can afford to spend on what Oamaru has to offer, and the houses will pay rates too. Let's be honest, the more money we spend, the worse it gets for Oamaru's inhabitants. Extra money spent will cause rates to go up, ultimately causing prices to go up to deal with the rate raise, which will undoubtedly cause problems for struggling Kiwis in Oamaru, which many people would not be happy about, especially with the already rising prices due to inflation. One driving factor for me and for many others who would like to sell the land is the event centre. We all love sports and would like to see it implemented even more in Oamaru. It wasn't the greatest to see so many outdoor sports games get cancelled last year because the rain in the winter started getting heavy. Besides, if you look at places like the Edgar Centre in Dunedin, you can see how much it's used. And you could say, why can't we make a reserve if we're making an event centre? Well, one underlying factor will always be the money involved. Why would you add even more costs? But a lot more people would rather have a sports centre instead of reserve. We already have natural spaces, but we don't have an event centre. And one way to fund that is by selling Forrester Heights. If Forrester Heights were to be turned into a reserve, I would like for that to be expanded upon for the environment, whether that would be solar panels, wind turbines, native trees and water tanks. I would like for that to contribute to a greener earth. This concludes why Forrester Heights needs to be sold. It's better for us and can ultimately be put into the things that those who want to make a reserve want. Selling the land is the best option. Whether it may be for the future or our economy, it should be sold.
Thank you very much. And yeah, well spoken. Right, councillors, questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. A couple of questions. First of all, I'm a bit worried about the mountain of debt because I don't think we've got a mountain of debt. Were you talking about the council or the country or people generally? Okay. Now, the other thing, just the other question, at the very end there, you said you'd like to see solar panels or wind turbines. Were you thinking of having them somewhere else or putting them on Forrester Heights land?
If you just put your microphone back on. Press the button again. Yeah, that's it.
I think that it could be on Forrester Heights or somewhere else. It really does just depend on what happens.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much. And yeah, it was very good to have you here today along with your schoolmates. So thank you very much. And no doubt you have to head back and go and do some schoolwork now. So thanks for coming along. Right, councillors, if we can go to the next one, number 8, Kate Farmer. So Kate's not coming in. Okay. So we do have Jane Blake who will come in. While she does that, is there anything from Kate Farmer's submission that you want to make note of? No? Okay. No. Councillor Hopkins?
I suppose if Kate had been here, I would have just asked her how she calculated that we'd get 11 million if we self-developed the land rather than 1 million for selling it. But yeah,
Okay. Councillor Tavendale?
I was just going to comment that there's quite a few different financial suggestions that come through the ones, and I think that's probably in void of us coming out with anything, and it's probably quite a tough piece of land to do that with. But yeah, I've been interested in the very varying financial options.
Okay, all right, so that was number 8. Right, so now we go through to number 62, which is on page 205. So we'll just go to that one, and welcome along, Jane. So good to have you in the chamber. So we'll just find your submission.
If you use the big arrows, you're in the verbal submission pack, use the big arrows to go to number 62.
So it's page
205. Yes, don't look at the one on the footer. If you click on the big arrows, it will tell you what page you're on.
Okay, so right, well, hopefully most people are on the right spot. So anyway, Jane, so you were going to be coming and seeing us tomorrow, but we've got you in here for today, so that's all very good. So welcome along. Thank you for your submission. Just when you're ready to go, push the button and go for it.
Yeah. I heard the other day that man is going to Mars. I also heard that Elon Musk was going to buy Mars and put 1 million self-sustaining lifestyle people there. Great price, $29.99 per acre. What for? Maybe he wants to get it right this time, to nurture, protect and sustain the land for the long haul and not for the greedy short, as we all know we've done. Yet, Forrester Heights has many caring, nurturing people, drawn many caring, nurturing people together to view, with a view of community. I've lived in Tamar Street off and on for years, and I've seen the land that was barren be treed by Oak Sim, and it's now a wonderful asset for us. It was his dream, and now it's our asset. It's beautiful. Lookout Point came from nothing. It seems we've got many excited and committing people wanting to do similar for Forrester Heights, providing the whole community something for the future to relish. How nice is this? Compare this to selling off the area to elite individuals who are probably not concerned about the land, the area, the community, only the me, me, me syndrome, which separates and divides our community even more. Instead, let us draw our community together. Let us nurture the land and the people and even more of Lookout Point. Because Lookout Point and its surrounding area draws many people walking, biking, cars, whether it's families or groups or friends or single people, to enjoy each other's company, to eat or to find a place of peace and solitude. It's fantastic. Many people, all of their own agendas, and that includes young people too, you know, it goes right through the community. I've seen it all my life. I've had boyfriends driving up past my place, going to Lookout Point, zooming down. And it's a wonderful place. So the more we can accommodate these people's space and needs is supporting their mental health, which is so needed today. And it contributes to a healthier community. We've really got to work at that. Not feeling so good today. What can I do? Where can I go? Go to the beach, go to the gardens, go for a bike ride. Haven't got a bike. I go to the harbour. How about a quiet place of contemplation? One where I can sit and ponder and contemplate and meditate. One where I can find solitude and peace. Wow, wouldn't it be nice if occasionally we had voluntary people that came and joined us if we wanted to share? Dream on. I've been in temporary communities where this works successfully. Why a quiet place? We spend our time on the busy outside in competing, comparing, wanting what we think is the best for us. We are still not happy, not contented. It's never ending. No matter where we live, what we live in, what our furniture is like, what car we drive, what we wear, that is all on the outside. So if we stop looking on the outside and instead go inside, we are away from competing, comparing and wanting. Only being. We fill up our tank of contentment. A great place to start is in a quiet place. Let us keep our community together, Waitaki. Let us keep our community spirit alive and ticking, or should I say kicking. Forrester Heights is a place to be, to see and enjoy for anyone, anytime, nurturing both self and land. Make this happen, Waitaki. Comment?
Thank you very much for that thoughtful submission. Councillors, any comments or questions? Councillor Wolstein.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, for your submission. I walk up there like a lot as well. I obviously walk past your place on a regular basis. So, but I was interested about your comment about Oak Sim having planted a lot of trees up on the Cape. Can you just enlarge on that just quickly, very quickly?
He lived at number 9. He was a school teacher, then he retired, and he just kept, as far as I know, he just kept planting and planting and planting.
So that's the natives on the side of Lookout Point, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's on Kennett Street, corner of Kennett and Tamar. However, you know, it was barren. It was nothing. You know, he created something. It's wonderful.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah.
Jane, if you just turn yours off for the moment, thanks.
Thanks, Jane. I suppose a couple of things. I'm just wondering about the notion of solitude and quiet. and whether you'd be likely to get more of that on, say, on the Cape itself, rather, or even in the gardens, rather than on that particular piece of forest of the hillside. So I mean, I'm just wondering why you think that would be a specifically, why you would identify that as a place that would specifically offer solitude and quietness. And the other question, if you make a comment, and a number of people have done this, compare this with selling the area to elite individuals who probably are not concerned about the land. So if the housing was not quote unquote elite, but let's say community housing or something of that nature, would your concerns be less?
I don't know what you mean by community, really. You know, do you mean council flatting or, you know, that sort of thing? It's community is very widespread. Yeah, if it could be shared in a way that it's, I mean, I go up there and I sit and I look and I see the town and it is so beautiful. And nothing can compare with that. And it takes me through my memories. When you're older, you do that. But it also takes you to a safe space. When you're looking at the sea and you're looking at that expansiveness and its natural, you know, the beauty of it, it's got something really special about it. Rather than having, you know, a few houses there that cut it off, there's not a lot of places that you can actually go and sit and be because someone else comes along past you or whatever up there, you know. If you could have areas, and I just thought of this the other day, but if you have the way it's planned, you can be a sort of in your own little space, yet you're not. Do you know what I mean? And so you could have several people doing that. I think it's really good mental health. Seriously. The water.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come in and see us and speak to us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, councillors, we've got Graham Clark, who is zooming in and who's there now. So we'll go back to submission number 9. The easiest way might be go back to the start and then go forward from there. So I have no idea what numbers we're using, unfortunately. I don't have a page number. Okay. So, right. So welcome, Graham. Can't see you and can't hear anything from you. So, are you there, Clarkie? Ah, yes. Right. We can see a bit of you now. So I can't hear anything from you yet.
Looks to me as a France.
So, Clarkie, can you hear us? We'll just try and give him a call. No, too late. It's already happening. When Jane was started her conversation before with about men going to Mars, and I thought she was going to refer back to us not even being able to work out technology here, but it turned into a different story. Okay. Right.
I told him because you're tough with you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So yeah, a couple of technical issues there. So while he tries that, we'll just look at what's next ones. We go to number 11. So that's Natalie Brown. So any comments on that one? Councillor Tabendale?
I guess just many comments on it's been dragging on too long. Just make a decision as well. I think that's what this process is about, and it will be quite nice to have a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, I think it's quite handy to make comment on that because people said, "Oh, you've heard from the community before," but the problem is the council has not done a proper, more formal engagement process like this, and so it was important to do this, have this process. We've had a petition which had reasonable number of signatures, but there was a lot of out of town ones. The whole petition was based on imagery which actually didn't show Forrester Heights. It showed the rest of the Cape and very little of Forrester Heights. So, that couldn't be taken as a clear indication really of what the community thought. So this has been the opportunity for people to speak both for and against. And I think that's the thing that we wanted to make sure that they did have. Clarkey is back, so you're just unmuted at the moment. Clarkey, you can hear us all right?
I can hear you.
Oh, yes, we can hear you now. Right, so anyway, we'll go back to your submission number 10, 9, sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, apologise, there's nothing on my submission form. It didn't go well on the online survey, which was unfortunate, but thank you for this opportunity. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. At least I don't have to dress up. Unfortunately, I got tested positive for COVID this morning. So anyway, initially, I just want to speak about Avon Street. It was proposed if this subdivision went ahead that the entrance to it would be from Avon Street. Now, I've spoken to a lot of the residents on Avon Street, and I'm a homeowner myself. It's a very narrow street. It's a complicated street. It's got a very unstable bank. It's sort of split into different levels, and I recall the last time that there was a proposed subdivision, it was estimated there'll be an extra 200 car movements a day. And with the way Avon Street is, that would be very difficult. Well, it would be detrimental to all of us in Avon Street, really, and possibly dangerous. You can call us NIMBYs, but we live in a cul-de-sac. Because of its piece, the place is used, the street's used a lot for the entrance to the walkway to Lookout Point, so there's a lot of pedestrians on the road. There is only one footpath there. The big clay bank, as council will know, they've spent thousands of dollars on it, so it's not that stable. I can talk from personal experience with my own bank on that street. So that's just one thing that I wanted to mention about Avon Street if the subdivision went ahead. I always look for, it's a big call for council to make a call on this. It's a big decision. It's something that's going to be with us forever. I always try to look for compromise, and I wonder if it is possible to reduce, if council decided it was necessary to go ahead with the sale of this of the land, could it be a compromise could be to lessen the subdivision and have a green belt below Lookout Point, so it wouldn't be as detrimental on that space. The other thing that I'd like to say, if that went ahead with a subdivision, I think there need to be very strong covenants on the size, height, colour, even design and landscaping. If you did decide to go ahead with a development, it would be something that we should be proud of. You know, the trend today at the moment seems to be big black boxes and things for housing. It would be, if it went ahead, it would have a huge impact on the whole area, on the historic precinct and harbour. Really, the question is it really necessary? You know, what's the area really worth? It mentions in the council brochure that it can produce excess funds, but is it, you know, we've got subdivisions happening all over the place at the moment. There should be lots of extra rates and fees coming in at the moment. It's a, as I say, it's a big call for all of you as councillors, because it's something that's going to be there forever. And my other thing about Avon Street, if it does go ahead, is there another way, if it did go ahead, is there another way that it could, the entrance could come from another street? But anyway, that's probably all I've got to say at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clarky, and appreciate you trying to find solutions to this situation. Yeah, we'll certainly be looking for that too along the way. All right, councillors, you got any questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Graham, thank you very much. I note your points about Avon Street and the property boundaries would make widening it problematic. Picking up on the other point you made, you talked about a green belt below the lookout point. So are you thinking of, say, a designated reserve above what is the land that is Forrester Heights and below the lookout point? In other words, the piece of the hillside south and above the site we're talking about.
Yes, Jim. Basically reducing the number of sections to half and creating that green belt, which would link in with the rest of the Cape and lookout point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. So just on that point, would you see your houses as continuing the houses along the lower part, along Test Street, from the present houses there along, and then the top part being reserved, being green?
Look, yeah, that's how I'd see it. If it was really necessary to sell that area, that would be a good compromise.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us through your COVID haze, which we wish you all the very best to both you and Julie to get through that. And no doubt you'll be having to have some enforced relaxation, so make the most of it.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers for that.
Bye-bye.
Right, councillors, if we can whip through to submission number 15, that's the next one that was going to be verbal, which is now a non-verbal. Sort of double up in some of the pages here, so. Submission by Paul Much from Waikouaiti. Any comments on that one?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah,
Put your microphone. Okay. Councillor Williams, you had something to say? Yep.
Yeah, I just catching up quickly on this one, but there's quite a few people that talk about us being warranting, you know, the situation when it comes to engineering, etc. I just want to make sure that people, you know, there's this thing called due diligence where, I mean, people do all of their investigations themselves, of course, and would depend on the information that they had paid to find out, as opposed to anything that we would, you know, there'd be no warranties on our part as such. So just clarifying that sort of area.
Yeah, the number of submissions cover some of those things, and certainly some of the discussions I've had with people in the community are about that. And really, it does come down to aware themselves and base it on geotech reports. There is a situation that if we were, as council, if we sold it, if it was developed, and if there was assets being vested in council, we want to make sure that they would be built well, that they weren't going to be at risk from any of the geotech issues. So that is absolutely part of the process, making sure ourselves that we're not taking on something that could be a liability to the community in the future. Councillor Tavendale.
I guess just to build on that, there's a lot of concern, I guess, around people building and getting consents from council and something going wrong after the fact. And obviously that's what our council consent process is all about, and trying to make sure things are done and done well. But, you know, there's been a few places in other areas where things have gone horribly wrong. So it is a valid concern people might have.
Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, I just note Mr. Mutch makes a comment regarding culturally ignorant, and he accuses council of being wokophobic, or free itself from the wokophobic shackles. I don't actually knew we had any of those, but anyway, apparently we have, according to him. But some other submitters have also referred to the cultural significance of the site. And I was wondering, can we get information on the cultural significance of the Cape or of Forrester Heights, because they are two separate areas. And I wonder whether this, once again, is a confusion of the Cape.
Yeah, I think it's something to be addressed in whatever final report comes through. Certainly there's been discussions along the way between us and Mana Whenua, so particularly Te Runanga o Maoraki, but also with the Waitaha Trust as well. So certainly they haven't expressed any particular concerns as such, but you know, there is an interest in the overall Cape as a place where there has been some habitation. So it is about being aware of that, and certainly I don't think any of us are wokophobics. I didn't even know that was such a thing, but there we go. New words every day. Okay, Councillor Tavendale, you may comment on that too.
Sorry, just one more thing. I guess it's around that and just our draft district plan. It'd be helpful to understand what the overlays that we're consulting with, or, you know, talking to the community about at the moment, that we're recommending to go forward in the draft district plan for this area, because I think that that's probably important information for us to be aware of.
Fair enough. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I just feel like an urgent need to put it on record. The fact I may not be wokophobic, but I'm certainly workaholic. I can't get enough of wokeness. I'm just super woke at every respect, in every respect. Although I'm mildly curious, this assertion, and I do look forward to some clarification. There's a claim by Mr. Mutch that this is a space sacred to our people. Well, no submission has made that case, other than that, as far as I'm aware, other than that unsubstantiated assertion.
Okay, right, moving through to submission number 17, which is Rebecca Anderson. So any comments on Rebecca's submission? Councillor Tavendale.
Just the comment on no property developers or investors wanted to go near it, if my recall's correct. Just that it never even got to that stage. I think it's worth just correcting incorrect information.
Thank you. Councillor Wallstein.
Yes, I just note that she makes a comment, as other submitters have as well, that the consultation process seems a waste of time because it's predicated on an unsuccessful idea. And some submitters have actually slapped council's hand for going through the submission process. Then others have thanked council for actually putting it out for submission. So I think taking it on, I think we as councillors thought we were doing the right thing to actually put it out for submission to allow the public to have their say. And it's a bit, frankly, annoying to have people telling us that it's well, it seems a waste of time. So I take issue with her comment in that respect.
Anyone else? Councillor Hopkins?
Yeah, well, sorry, I may have missed what Councillor Tavendale said, but and if I did, I apologise. But the reference in the second paragraph to the fact that when the proposal to sell the land was initially made to finance the renovation of the Oamaru Opera House, the submitter says no property developers or investors wanted to go near it. Well, did you mention that? Yeah, because that's simply not true. It was stymied because of a clerical error in a document in the 1930s.
Yeah, again, there's a repetition of quite a bit of mythology along the way and urban myth scenarios, really, I think, around a lot of the things. And, you know, people speaking to someone who says this is what the situation is or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's where we've tried to actually try and clear up as much of that along the way. But there's still people who haven't seen all the information, and I can't blame them for not wading through the copious amounts. But yeah, certainly when we get a report back, it really is important that we address a lot of these misconceptions along the way, so people understand what the background is, at least, to the situation. Anyway, councillors, we still don't have anyone turning up here yet, so if we go through to submission number 21. Which is Gary Shirley's submission. And any comments on that one? Okay, nothing there. Right, so if we go back now to this page, so number 10, number 10, Simon Lawrence.
Was there another attachment supposed to be with this one, or not? Was there another attachment supposed to be with this one? No.
So yeah, it indicates the attachment, which when it was like that, it was usually the written one. So looking at Jude there, so nodding her head. So there should have been a written one in there, and there may have been some comments on that, which we haven't got on the typed form here. So when he gets here, I'll just ask, let him know that we haven't had that information. Okay, all right, so we're just going to switch things around. So we'll take Vicky Jane next, who's speaking on behalf of both herself and Friends of the Harbour. So submission number 12, 12 and 13. No, sorry, both under 12. That's what it is. Go to that one. Right, and welcome. If you just take a seat over here. Yeah, those first couple of seats there. Very good. So welcome to you and Sally. So thank you very much for your submissions, and we've got you down for 2 of them, your personal one and one for Friends of the Harbour. Yeah. No, that's appreciated. So thank you very much for the submissions, and thanks for coming in. Just when you're ready to go, just push the button on the microphone and it's all. That's the one.
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Vicky Jane. I'm submitting on behalf of Friends of Oamaru Harbour. We're a collective of residents and ratepayers primarily concerned with protecting and enhancing both the historic and environmental character of this very special area, the jewel in Oamaru's crown. The hill immediately overlooking it is obviously very integral to that, both aesthetically and environmentally. We strongly oppose the sale of what has been public land since the 19th century and instead propose the establishment of a native forest reserve that will enhance the existing natural character and provide a valuable recreational, environmental and educational asset for the whole community, as well as a tourism drawcard. This is what we presented to you back in February, and I hope that you've all had a bit of a chance to have a look at it during the interim. We envisage a planting program designed to protect view shafts, tracks that crisscross the hill from Test and Avon Streets up to Lookout Point. Some have already been formed and already being well used. There would be picnic areas that could possibly be adopted by schools, by community groups throughout the district, with simple seating and picnic tables and so on. We've also planted some sample trees just to give people an idea of what could be accomplished. Since we first mooted this and presented it to councillors back in February, it's had a lot of support, including offers of free plants, input from plant experts, offers of labour, ideas for a sculpture walk, and for metal bird sculptures with identifying cue codes that would add to the educational benefits of the walkways. It's been very exciting to hear the ideas that people have and the enthusiasm so many have for this proposal. As noted in our submission, a regenerating native plant reserve on the western end of Cape Wombo, christened Forrester Heights in 2004, comes with a whole pile of positives. Firstly, it offers an exciting and inclusive community project that more than meets the criteria for endowment land usage at no cost to the council, since Friends of Oamaru Harbour have identified sufficient support for this proposal to enable the establishment of a non-profit trust, which will undertake planting, track building and maintenance work. Secondly, it will retain the special landscape nature of Cape Wombo in its entirety. It will also be in keeping with the increasingly vital need to address climate change impacts by providing a carbon sink that will also generate carbon credit income. You may have seen Dr. Linton Winder's comment in the Oamaru Mail recently. He actually acquired an estimate from Carbon Corp as to how much that piece of land could earn if it was planted. Forrester Heights itself could earn 60,000 over the next 20 years and up to 500,000 across the entire Cape, which is, so it does actually can create a direct income as well as an indirect one through tourism. I guess what I really want to highlight about this project is that it's very inclusive. It's something that all our residents, young and old, can take part in and feel proud of as a community. In what have been, somewhat difficult times over the last few years, what shines through is that it is the cohesiveness of communities that is so vital, that makes a difference to how resilient they are to change or to challenge. Really, there's been perhaps too much focus on what divides us, and that this is somehow a divisive issue when it doesn't have to be. During the consultation period, the Friends have been canvassing a wide range of local opinion and have noted widespread concerns that the sale of land is somehow being represented as a done deal. The information document Waitaki District Council created to support the consultation appears to support these concerns. Its wording generally emphasises the difficulties and costs of a reserve option, while offering submitters notional candy in terms of asking what they'd like to spend the sale dollars on. This despite the fact that no actual dollar amount has been formally mooted, though there has been one fairly low figure of 1.5 to 2 million bandied about. Also, councillors failed to mention the various costs involved in such a challenging subdivision. Land in question is steep, geologically unstable, access is limited, and will cause huge disruption to nearby residents, particularly in Avon Street. Additional servicing structure, upgrading sewage lines, handling stormwater runoff, and so on, is much more likely to end up on ratepayer bills than on the developer's costings. While there is vague talk of covenants to protect the view shafts from Lookout Point and suggestions that this will be a quality development, there's no evidence that this will be the case. Commercial realities will undoubtedly dictate the eventual size and appearance of any housing development, regardless of whether the council is a partner in it or a regulator of it. If houses are built to permitted heights, they will obliterate the view of the harbour from Lookout Point, which just happens to be one of the town's most iconic tourist attractions. It even features in the district's tourism promotion material. Other issues related to the site have been downplayed or completely ignored. These include the following. Firstly, that the totality of Cape Wombo should be recognised as an outstanding natural landscape under law, as presented to the council in a letter dated 25 March. A section of the RMA actually requires decision makers to recognise and provide for the protection of outstanding natural features and landscapes from inappropriate subdivision, use and development. This requirement is particularly strict for coastal marine areas with outstanding natural characters such as Cape Wombo. Aesthetic values and the maintenance enhancement of amenity values are specifically listed as features to be protected. It's worth noting that Forrester Heights may be a smaller area compared to the rest of the Cape, but it actually comprises 1/3 of the visual area when viewed from the town. And as various people have pointed out, the so-called Forrester Heights area is an integral part of the Cape as a whole. It is the outstanding landscape feature that is the very reason for the establishment of Oamaru as a port and a financial hub back in the 19th century. No Cape, no harbour, no town. Secondly, the increasingly robust requirements for both local and national bodies to incorporate climate change mitigation and resilience into all their decision-making processes. As previously noted, a native plantation would function as a revenue-generating carbon sink, as well as enhancing natural diversity and providing an area for healthy recreation close to the town centre. Planting would help stabilise the steep slopes, reduce rainwater runoff, and increase wildlife diversity around the harbour. There are some very real concerns that increased runoff from the footings, roads, construction pads, etc., could, in fact, detrimentally impact the harbour and its existing rich wildlife. Then there's the impact on tourism. Oamaru is an increasingly attractive destination for tourists because of its unspoilt historic and natural character. A high-end Queenstown style housing development dominating the harbour and historic district landscape would detract from both the historic ambience of the harbour area and its natural character. And there's a fair chance it would impact negatively on existing wildlife. It would also badly impact the views from Lookout Point. On the other hand, the establishment of a native reserve would provide a popular pedestrian link from harbour to Lookout Point, attract more native birds to complement existing harbour wildlife, and provide a beautiful natural addition to the area's existing tourist attractions. More visitors equals more income for everyone, including the council. Another issue is the impact on the town's rating base. What attracts new residents to Oamaru and therefore increases the council's rates income is not a one-off housing development. It's the character of the town, its surrounds, its harbour, its green spaces, its sense of community. a prominent and expensive housing development dominating the harbour does nothing for any of these. I would like to raise another concern regarding the whole consultation process. During the past few weeks, we have spoken to a lot of people, some of whom feel really strongly about this piece of land and want to see it kept as a public reserve. But they didn't actually want to put their names to anything because they themselves or a close relative either work for the council or contract to the council. And they didn't want to openly oppose what they clearly see as something council wishes to pursue. I do find that a little frightening. I'd like to think that you are working, for us, the residents and ratepayers. Others have feared being dismissed as anti-progress, when in this case, progress seems only to refer to people with money spotting ways to make even more money. I just wonder, should these people feel their opinions don't count? Is it a case of hearts and minds versus power and pocketbook? If so, I sincerely hope that the hearts and minds rule, because that is what will make a strong, cohesive community, and is that will grow this town in a way that is completely compatible with all its beautiful, natural and historic character. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for yours. And probably just on that last point about people not submitting, I can assure you it goes both ways because, as we've gone through, I'm sure all of us have actually seen names on there and it's like, they've got a different opinion than what I thought they had, but that's absolutely fine. It's really interesting seeing which way people are going on this. And, some people would think would be totally for reserve, saying sell it. Others that I'd think be the other way, they're saying, no, make it a reserve. So, there absolutely should be no concern from anyone about, what camp they might be seen to be in, because it's everyone's right to have their opinion. But I do also know of people who don't want to say, I want to be sold, because they're fearing they're putting their head above the parapet, just in the same way that we've had some very abusive, very nasty, libelous submissions being made about us in through this process. And, people see that and they think, well, I don't want to put myself in that position. And they just don't submit because people can be just horrible, nasty people sometimes. Minority.
Mostly on Facebook, I found.
You haven't read all the submissions then. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, we've had to put up with some pretty nasty stuff. And we're actually just here to try and make the best decision for the community. So anyway, we'll go through the process and get on with our jobs. That's what we're here for. So anyway, councillors, Councillor Tavendale, question.
We don't expect you to have read all their submissions. That was a relatively big task. Take your point on people not feeling confident, and I have heard comments both ways on that, and that's a real shame that we're, as a community, at a situation that it's, I guess, people strongly enough that it tends to scare some off. But yeah, that's a shame. Just want to say though, thank you for the well thought out submission. There's been a lot of time put into that, and a lot of suggestions and a lot of offers of volunteer support. And there's been a lot of support for your submission throughout them as well. So thank you for the time you've put into that. Something that has come up through other submissions is around things like predator-proof fencing. I'm just wondering whether the Friends of the Harbour have any view on that, or whether you've talked about that at all.
I'm aware it would be lovely, and we would all love to have a Zealandia in Oamaru, I'm sure. I suspect it's too small an area to try and predator-proof. I think probably the best way to go would be intensive trapping. So you do predator control that way, rather than try and, create a fence, which is fairly expensive way to go.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vicky. I understand you obviously haven't necessarily read all the submissions, but I would commend to you the submissions from the Oamaru Intermediate School, a rich tapestry of opinions, some of which challenge you and us. In relation to your submission, this is the jewel in the crown, you say. And you say that this relatively modest land area, if developed, would dominate the harbour. How would that happen when already half the hillside is subdivided and built on? When there is housing on the ridgeline to the east and above Forrester Heights, when there's a large rest home below? What is so special about this particular relatively small piece of land on a substantially developed current hillside?
I think it's, you know, like if you look across, you know, from the other side of town, that is what the backdrop to the historic area is. You know, you look across town, you're looking across the historic area to that hill. And it's would be a visual uncomfortable contrast, I think, to have, you know, the historic area backed by that.
So I think you've asked the question and it's been answered, so it's fine. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, hi Vicky, and thanks for your submissions and all the work you and Mike have put into this and others. Just you make the comment there regarding you noted widespread concerns the sale of the land is somehow being represented as a done deal. Represented by who and how? Because that's certainly not the council point of view, and that was never given in that indication in any of the council documents that I read.
Well, I mean, this is just what people have said to us. And I, you know, have spoken to a lot of people, as you'd be aware. We've had a stall down at the market, and we've engaged with people in other ways. And several people have said, oh, you won't get them to change their minds, a done deal. And so I'm just repeating, you know, that's what they've said.
Thank you.
Just to follow on from that, didn't you bother asking them why they thought it was a done deal?
It's probably not Vicky's job to do that, to be fair. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is an allegation that's levelled at us, and people. I think people take meaning out of sentences that perhaps weren't meant, but that's just the way it is sometimes. And the reality is, you know, people do see this as being a process. Why are we even talking about this again? We've decided already. Well, we haven't decided already. There's never been a definitive decision made other than to sell it along the way. And this is about, let's have a proper discussion with the community, information, covering the options as best as we can in the background, the context, so that people can make informed comment on it, and then we hear from them. So that's what we've been doing. So, you know, that we can hopefully get it sorted out one way or the other. We've got Simon Lawrence, sorry. Okay, so thank you very much to you both for coming in. And yeah, we appreciate the time and effort that has been gone into your submission and the work that you've done. Thank you. So councillors, we just go back one now to Simon Lawrence's. Now, you've been emailed out by Jude the original version of his submission. So doesn't say a lot other than he's from Christchurch, but he owns rental properties in Oamaru. Number 10. Oh, maybe I've got it. So, sorry, I thought it went to everyone. So anyway, as I say, really the only information that's on there was his address and so on, and general feedback. I own rental properties in Oamaru.
Simon has no show.
Oh, okay.
They thought he was downstairs, but he's not. So
right. Okay. So. Right. So, okay. So Simon hasn't turned up. We thought he was downstairs waiting for someone to, a support person, but that's not happened. So, yeah.
Just to clarify, Gary,
Councillor Hopkins.
Beyond the fact that he has rental properties here, there's no substantial argument other than what we have in front of us. There is the PDF just says that. It doesn't say why he has the position.
I've read you his whole submission. Right. Okay, so with that, we'll have a break now until 1 o'clock. Yeah, 1 o'clock. So we'll pause the live stream and we'll be back at 1 p.m. So thank you very much. Right, everyone. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for joining us again, and welcome back. We've just learned that Councillor Percival has read some of the submissions, so it's really good. It's only not even quarter of the way through yet. Anyway, so councillors, we've got speakers coming up next. Is Mr. Malvina there yet? Not yet. Okay. So councillors, I think if we can go to try to find the next one that's not turning up. Number 29. No. Okay, sorry, if you go to 26, it's not on the master list, but it is on the list here. Is now being a non-verbal. So number 26 is Wayne Howard. Okay, are there any comments on that one? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just a very quick clarification. Again, we've got advice that there's a PDF, but beyond that, nothing. So I assumed that this person would be coming along and presenting something to us.
Okay.
So what we have, what does the PDF consist of?
The PDF will be they will have written out a hard copy form, and then that's been scanned in, but also translated into an electronic version. In this case, they've got the half of it, but not the other half. So we'll get Jude onto that one to get us the original version of number 26, please, Jude. Okay, councillors, and if we can go back to number 13 now, and welcome Gary Melvin into the council chamber. Afternoon, Gary.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, just as soon as you're ready to go, just go for it.
I've just come along to speak in person, obviously, to voice my concerns about Forrester Heights. Not necessarily in agreements with being called Forrester Heights, but it is what it is. It just seems to me that it's been something that's been left untied for a long time, but I'm not sure that right now is a good time for it to be dealt with either. Given what's going on in the world and locally, a lot of stuff to be dealt with. If it was to be sold, is now a good time for it to be developed with materials and things as they are, and a lot of roadblocks in the way of that kind of thing. Personally, I think it should be put into reserve status and just left as it is at the moment until there's a better time for it to be dealt with. I don't agree with houses being built on it. It would be nice to see it have something put on there that would make it pay its way, but unfortunately that probably doesn't lend itself towards a reserve status. So really, in order to preserve it in its natural state, I feel that leaving it in the time being, or putting the protection on it that it obviously needs, is what needs to happen. And I can see that some people have been there doing a marvellous job putting some trees in. I haven't got much longer till I retire, and I'll be in there if it's still there to help them out to do some more of it. So, you know, it could be an ongoing thing. It's not something that needs to be dealt with, I think, at this point, as far as building houses or anything on it. I think the council's really got enough on its plate dealing with what's going on out there financially and otherwise. So I think that as far as the decision-making process is concerned, it'd be nice to see it being viewed in a more constitutional way. And by that, I mean whatever the majority say. So as much as I'd like to see it go into reserve, you guys might find out that actually the majority want it sold. And if that was the case, then in my opinion is that's what should happen. But if the majority want to have it put into reserve status and some trees put on it, that's what should happen. A lot of non-constitutional or unconstitutional stuff going on in this country right now. And it's not a good look, I think, to follow on that path. It'd be nice to see something done that the majority want.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Thank you.
That's pretty much it. Yep.
Happy to take some questions if you've got any. Councillor Thompson. Gary, you can just turn yours off. So.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. Yes, we are dealing with a whole lot of issues, but we're not going to solve anything by parking those issues up one after the other. I represent the Wahimo ward, so I don't know any of the personalities, anyone around town. So I'm just looking at this totally objectively. As a ratepayer, are you happy to pay increasing rates because council needs to hold property so that we can decide what to do with it in the future?
I don't see any reason why it can't be put into reserve and just planted in trees if that was the case, or left as it is. It hasn't been that big a burn up till now, has it? You know, at the end of the day, I just don't think this is the right time to be dealing with that. There's other issues that are way bigger. And I understand what you're saying about it being something that's sitting there like along with a lot of other things that need to be dealt with. But it just seems to me, and I think a lot of other people, that right about now could almost be viewed as a smokescreen. There's other things that are more important. World pandemics and the economy going the way it's about to go. This is just something that seems to be, you know, probably not what we should be dealing with right now.
I'm pretty sure if we were looking for a smokescreen, we'd probably find something less polarising in an election year.
I'm not saying it was a deliberate thing, Gary.
No.
I'm not at all saying that, you know, but whether, whatever, it could be viewed that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not saying there's any corruption.
No.
At all.
Well, there's plenty of others that do. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thanks.
If you just turn yours off.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, for your comments. Just a question regarding, following up from Councillor Thompson's question. Some of the submissions actually accuse council of not looking after reserves it has now. So, because reserves cost time and effort and money to maintain. So I think the comment made really was, it's going to add to the council's bill even further to try and maintain it. So how do you see that? Where do you see that money coming from?
Yep, I understand what you're saying. But if we had that view, or if they held that view some years ago, we probably wouldn't have the spaces we've got now. And those are things, or that particular question is something that can be addressed in other ways. And as a ratepayer, I'd be happy to contribute towards that, if that's what, and obviously that's what would need to happen. To me, once it's gone forever. And it's not something we're ever going to get back. And the value of it is way beyond money. So for that reason, I don't think money should come into that side of it. We would find it, and we will find the money to do that. That's your job, isn't it?
Okay, time's up. So thank you very much for taking the time to come in and make the submission and so on, both on written and verbal. And yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Good luck with the decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Gary.
I would like to have to make it.
Okay, we'll just see whether the next speaker is with us. Okay. So if we go on to number 14, which is Ron Dorr. Okay. So good afternoon, Ron. So welcome along and
Good afternoon. I'm here solely to talk about the Cape. As a yachtsman, I've travelled the world and Capes are very important. And from this point of view, I would like to see the Cape left alone, tidied up, and let the future generations enjoy it. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. That we'll see if there's some questions. I think you mentioned, I think it was yours mentioned about a harbour in Greece. Is that your one? Yeah. Just can't see it there. So yeah, how do we look on
I'm
Google?
very deaf, sorry.
That's all right. So I had a look on Google and you know, it's got a number of different harbours around there. But what was the nature of that harbour that was most similar to our one?
No, I just can't hear. I'm so deaf. I shouldn't have come here. I'd leave it to you.
Okay.
But I make the point that the harbour is a world-renowned area now. Could be joined up with the geopark for the future. And to me, that's exciting.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much for coming in. Okay. Right, if we just see whether the next speaker is here or not.
Just a question. I know we're going to discuss the non-verbal submissions as a group, probably tomorrow, largely. But given the assertions that Mr. Dorr made, are we going to be able to discuss essentially that our chance to talk to him has been rendered impossible because of his difficulty in hearing? Sympathise and understand that, but it does mean we can't challenge or test some of the arguments that he's put to us. So how might we be able to do that?
Well, in the same way that you challenge and test any non-verbal submitter, you take it on what's there. If there are particular things that you want to draw out of that for officers to consider in a report, then we need to make sure that that's gathered. If there are things that any submitter has that may not be reappearing in someone else's.
Well, I mean, just for the record, then I would simply note that it's ironic that we should be compared with Cape or harbour entries in Greece, where in fact, you know, every hillside is populated with very characterful, tourist-friendly white buildings with bright blue doors and, you know, largely totally built over. And also it's ironic that we have somebody saying, I've bought substantial properties in Oamaru, and then turning around and saying, oh, I don't want residential intensification.
Yep, you can take that for what it's worth. Okay. So if we can go now to number 16. And we have Dr. Linton Winder. Good afternoon, Linton. Welcome along. So grab a seat and yeah, the floor is yours.
I have to say I wasn't expecting to get in here early, so that's a good sign that you're keeping up to time. So thanks very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. I'm sure it's going to be an epic session for you today and tomorrow. My name's Linton Winder. I run a small business in Oamaru. And in a previous life, I was a research scientist. And so I have a lot of experience of data analysis, particularly around questionnaires and how you interpret opinions. And that's what I'm going to talk about in my 5 minutes. And so really I want to comment on the results of the consultation. I read the article in the Honorary Mail on Friday and realised that the analysis of the data published and that included in your agenda is not really quite correct. The first thing I should say before I go on to explain why is just a huge thank you to the staff of the council who must have worked night and day to get that information up online for us all to read before this session. So thanks so much to them. The first reason that there are problems with the data is that 60 submissions were not included in the overall analysis. And those are ones which were handwritten or sent in as letters. And they expressed an opinion, but they weren't recorded on the Likert scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree that was in the questionnaire published by the council. The second reason is that during the consultation, opinions were measured using that scale, the scale running from strongly disagree to strongly agree. For this reason, you cannot report the results in percentage terms because crucial information is lost when it is done this way. Using percentages underestimates the strength of opinion, and it is vital in an analysis that all the data is used because then every respondent's view is taken into account when you summarise the data. So I've had a busy weekend and I've reanalyzed the data and I followed an approach which was used in another submission. And I'm sure you've all had a look at this. This was 887. It was the analysis done by Business South. And they're part of NZ Business, I think, and are an umbrella organisation for businesses in the whole of the country. And the analysis they did was quite sophisticated, and I followed that because really it's the correct way in which this data should be looked at. So I reanalyzed the data. I coded all the responses into a spreadsheet. I included the 60 responses that had been omitted in the original analysis. And I can explain very briefly as to how this works. And it's very straightforward. So I'm going to just give an example as if only 2 people had responded to your consultation. So if those 2 people had said, we strongly agree with selling, then the result of the consultation is we strongly agree that we're selling the land. If you had those 2 people and one said, I strongly disagree with selling, and one said, I strongly agree with selling, then there's a difference of opinion. And the only way to reasonably look at that data is to say they kind of cancel each other out and we're back in the middle. And if it ends up in the middle like that, then someone else is going to have to make a decision about the outcome. But it just depends on what the data looks like. So I've done that, but I haven't done it for the 2. I did it for the 900 odd submissions that were given into the council during this consultation. Okay, so there were, I think 904 is how many I analysed. I eliminated 1 or 2 because they gave no name. This is a huge number of replies for a consultation process. The annual plan received about 50 and the spatial plan a few hundred. So this is an undoubtedly robust analysis. And they're all from the locality pretty much. There are very few results from people outside Waitaki region. So here are the results. I didn't have time to get the my PowerPoint to you because I only finished this yesterday. It took me about 9 hours. This is the result for our consultation. These are the results that you were given from the consultation process. And as you can see, the reserve option, there is very strong agreement that the reserve option should be adopted. And in fact, the sell and do nothing options are actually on the negative disagree side of the scale. So if you analyse all the data together, it is telling you that the community want to keep the reserve and that the community does not want to sell or do nothing. Just very briefly, these are the results from Business South. And these results are exactly the same essentially as that of the community. So both the business community and the wider community in Waitaki region are telling the council that they do not want the land sold, that they want it to be kept as a reserve. So in conclusion, the consultation process demonstrates overwhelming support for the reserve option. The consultation process does not show support for selling the land or retaining it as it is at the moment. Mr. Kircher, on the 11th of August, you said that and I'm really pleased that this process has happened. You said it's time to stop kicking the can down the road and make a decision on Forrester Heights one way or the other. That decision has been made by the community with an overwhelming commitment to retain the area as a reserve. In my opinion, it would be a travesty of local democracy if any other decision was made. Councillors, I know you have different opinions, but I ask you to put your own personal opinions aside and honour the view of the local community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linton. Councillor Thompson.
I resent the assertion that I have an opinion that is contrary to yours. Currently, I have no opinion, and I'm being swayed by the submissions that are being made to us.
That's great to hear. Let me say thank you very much on behalf of the community for that.
Councillor Wolfstein.
Yeah, thanks, Linton, for your work over the weekend and all the hours you put in, as we did as well, reading submissions. I see in you talk about the carbon credits, you talk to carbon crop regarding the carbon credits, 60,000 between now and 2050, $60,000 worth of carbon credits. Was that just for the Forrester Heights area, or was that for the whole Cape area?
No, that area is just for Forrester Heights. If you could include the whole of the Cape, then I think it is about $500,000 up to that time period. But it depends on the history of the site, and it depends whether it's continually forested or not. So obviously Forrester Heights was cut down prior to the initial proposal to develop it. But I'm not sure about the history about the Cape as a whole, but in principle, it could be something between those two figures for the whole of the Cape.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Winder. I'm also interested in the carbon credits earnings, which you say will be 60,000 between now and 2050, which means by my calculation that area would be likely to earn a little more than $2,000 a year in carbon credits, the Forrester Heights site itself. What would be the OPEX required to actually generate that income?
Well, firstly, the company will organise the receipt of carbon credits for you. And that is, off the top of my head, I think it's 10% of the money that you earn is taken by the company who act on the behalf of the landowner. Okay, so there's no immediate cost in relation to gaining the carbon credits from the council. In addition, of course, there are issues around replanting, around the scheme which would be needed to make the reserve into a native woodland, which would benefit all of us. And that $2,000 a year, if it was spent in Forrester Heights, would make a very substantial contribution to those costs.
Sorry, just to clarify, the 2,000 is an expense. That's the carbon credit. So that what you've told us is we'd get 60,000, which is a bit more than 2,000 a year for the next 28 years. what is the cost of earning to us of earning, other than the 10% to the company? What is the cost of to us of earning that 2,000 per annum?
It isn't a cost, it's a carbon credit. You earn money from the government for having woodland.
Yeah,
that's the point.
I think possibly it's assuming that someone else is going to go and do the work and plant the trees and provide them in the first place. And I think, you know, I mean, some of the argument has been made around the environment. The reality is, if we were focused on the environment, we could sell that land, buy 50 hectares of unproductive land somewhere, plant pine trees, and do much more for climate change issues than just that bit of land. And revenue wise, we would do much better for the ratepayers. So it's part of the argument. I know there's more to it than that. One of the challenges we have is we've had roughly 6% of our public have responded to this. It's a view of part of the community, but there's 94% of people haven't responded. How, you know, I appreciate all the work that you've gone to with your analysis, which is great, thank you. But how would you say we should factor the majority who haven't said anything into this?
The answer is very simple. Local democracy works by people contributing to consultation. If they wish not to do so, then their opinion cannot be taken into account. As a statistician and as a scientist, the only information that you have to hand is the information that's on those boards, that there is an overwhelming belief that the site should remain a reserve in the community, that the community want the site to remain as a reserve. And the only logical thing to do is to assume that that 90% who chose not to contribute to the consultation have that view, because that's the only information that you have to hand.
Thank you. Councillor Williams. Oh, you just turn yours off again.
Thank you, Dr. Winder. How do you account for the fact that there was a very strong and passionate, yet slightly misleading pamphlet being provided? How do you account for that when you're only going to look at statistics? Potentially, if there had been other people so passionate on the other side trying to seek with a misleading information potentially, then we might have actually had a more balanced representation on your final graph. But it's certain that there's a lot of information that's come through. If you go through and read every single comment, I'm not sure if you just looked at the yes, no, etc. But if you go through and read all the comments, there's a lot of decisions have been made in there based on inaccurate information, and it really stands out. So how do we account for that?
Firstly, I think we might run out of time with this discussion, but I do not accept your assertion that information was misleading on the website and information provided by those who wanted to retain the site as reserve. I think that is factually incorrect, and I think the assertion is unacceptable to say that in this meeting. If you actually read the 900 submissions, which I did, and I looked at all the comments, you will find that there are claims that the council itself was biased in terms of the information it provided. Okay, so you cannot make that assertion and then claim somehow that this overwhelming response was compromised by a picture or something that you personally didn't approve of or like. People are intelligent and they can make their own judgment and decision about the information in front of them. And to be honest, I think you should withdraw that comment.
I'm basing my comments on things that I've heard by canvassing society myself, just as you guys have. And I apologise if you think that our pamphlet was misleading. And I personally don't think that ours was, just as you don't see that the one that you're basing your opinion on was. So we have to agree to disagree on some facts potentially.
Yes, I can accept that outcome, and that outcome means that you should accept the information in front of you, which is taken from 900 people. And I bet this council has never had that many people respond to a public consultation before.
Yes, we have.
Well, it's a very large number, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
What's the largest number? Because we tried to find this information out, but we couldn't.
Probably one of the early ones I was involved in was when we did a full restructure of the rating system.
I can understand why that one was very popular. Yeah.
But look, it is a large number. It is a self-selected number, and we have to take that into account. But we appreciate as I say, the analysis that you have done.
I'm sorry, I don't agree that you have to take that into account. The consultation is a consultation, and you have to accept the democratic voice. In an election, in a national election, people don't vote. It doesn't make any difference as to who actually gets into power. In this case, the people who could be bothered to contribute to the consultation have provided their opinion. That's the only piece of information that you have in front of you, and you need to accept that as the voice of the community.
I don't want to prolong the argument. We have a lot more to take into account than just the responses on this. We have to consider the effects to the district and to all of the people, not just those who submit. And that's not predetermining what direction we're going to go in. It's just we have more to take into account. And in a general election, you at least they have the safety, I suppose, of having the majority of people have actually voted. There is certainly not the majority have responded on this particular issue, and we have the sovereign right to actually make a decision whichever way we want to, but we will be making that with the best of information that we possibly can, and with the broadest knowledge that we possibly can, and that is something that we bring to this that some respondents won't have had. It's just the nature of anything that we are dealing with, is that very often we'll have a more complete picture than many of the people who engage, and that's a lot. It's not taking away from anyone who has engaged, because some of them are very well informed.
I think my response would be, if you look at the number of people in Waitaki region who vote for the mayor each election, it's a very small percentage of the population. And so it's the same argument, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, last time
and quite rightly, the person who gets the most votes becomes the mayor.
So just on that, again, the majority of people voted. 65% voted for me. The person who got 25% said, well, that doesn't really matter because 35% people didn't vote for me. Again, it's some of the same arguments now being made the other way, that because 6% have voted given their opinion, that's binding. It's not. We wouldn't be having verbal submissions if all we actually needed to do was put out a postal ballot, an online ballot. So, Dr. Winder, I'm going to bring this to an end, because there's not. I don't know that either of us is necessarily going to convince the other of the argument, but I really do appreciate the time that you have taken to read the submissions and the analysis that you have done, and coming in here today and giving your thoughts on the issue. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks very much. And my final plea is to honour the community view.
Okay, councillors, moving now, have we got the next person here? Yeah, okay. So submission 886, so we need to go through to the attachment 9. So you use at the bottom of the page, the little page symbol, arrow across until you get to attachment. No, might be better off coming.
Comes up on the top as well, on the top of your page. Jump from 1, you go from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9.
So number 886. Submission 886. If you actually go through to 10 and then arrow backwards from there. No, that didn't work on it.
Go to attachment 9 and you go to page 67 and attachment 9.
Yeah, you still got to push the arrows.
That's just.
Apologies as we deal with technology. Okay, so Hendrickas Fanlia, so welcome along. Apologies for the slight delay in us finding a place. It's in quite a different spot to all the other submissions that we've been dealing with. But anyway, thank you very much for coming in, and the floor is yours.
Righto. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hendrickas Fanlia. I live in Oamaru as a ratepayer and resident. This presentation is to inform you why I'm against the sale of Forrester Heights for subdivision into housing, which will significantly detract from the beauty of the Oamaru Harbour area. Forrester Heights is already owned by the ratepayers of the Waitaki district, so there are no extra costs involved in keeping the land. Once developed with native plantings, it will greatly enhance the beauty of the harbour area. The amenities in the harbour area have been improved immensely over the years, and there's been a noticeable increase in the number of people using both these facilities and walking tracks. My personal proposal would be to include Forrester Heights as a permanent part of Cape Wombrau Reserve, and that the complete reserve will become a part of the Oamaru as a native plant and wildlife sanctuary. There's already an idea floated that this area will be a self-funding native plant revegetation project. In my view, this project would greatly benefit from the inclusion of the schools in Oamaru, clubs, and indeed the rest of the community. The result would be a project that the community as a whole will own and develop. The schools in particular can have a special part to play in seeing to the enhancement of wildlife by keeping the area pest-free and to keep records of their work and the results achieved over time. It was written in the Oamaru Mail on the 15th of April 2022 in the mayoral view, Mr. Coach, that quote, take a moment to consider the north end of Oamaru. Yes, people from there can travel to the aforementioned reserves, but not have good access to transport. So getting there is more difficult. Isn't it time to consider providing more reserves in places like North End rather than just adding ones where we already have them? My answer to this article is that Forrester Heights was a reserve for over 3/4 of a century until 2013, when the Dune Council changed the reserve designation to endowment status. Therefore, this transaction should be reversed back to reverse status. Forrester Heights was and should stay as an existing reserve in the harbour area. Retransport in the same aforementioned article. The proposed Waitaki Event Centre will be located in the north end of Oamaru and Centennial Park. It is not a reserve, but it will be a fantastic facility to enjoy for those who live in North Oamaru. However, for some people living in the south of Oamaru and without easy access to transport, will find it difficult to make use of this proposed new facility. The same argument applies for people living in North Oamaru who wish to use reserves but find it difficult to make use of them due to not having easy access to transport. If this is the case, then our elected representatives may have to investigate a better transport service for those who need it. I will add that the event centre has a price tag in excess of $20 million. Much of the money coming from Oamaru ratepayers, organisations, businesses, and kind-hearted philanthropists. Sorry if I've missed anyone out. My request, therefore, is that Forrester Heights be returned to reserve status and that the offer by the Friends of the Oamaru Harbour to form a Harbour Hill Trust be accepted, whereby they will pay the cost of developing the land as a native reserve, with additional trails, viewpoints and picnic areas. Both present and future generations will then be able to enjoy this gem for its flora, bird life, and recreation in perpetuity. And all this without any cost to council coffers. Finally, the geology of the Forrester Heights seems to be an area of unstable clay with many underrunners visible from Waterfront Road. For housing, the unstable steep site would require major earthworks. Any runoff of the clay during rain events or dust by wind, which we get plenty of, would seriously degrade water quality in the harbour, plus the problems associated with siltation. This will also have a negative impact on the wildlife using the area. End of my submission.
Thank you very much. Right, councillors, any questions? Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you for your submission. Interesting to read. And just a question regarding the Harbour Hill Trust as formed by the Friends of the Harbour, or perhaps it's said to be formed. If that trust was in the future to fail and or couldn't raise the money to pay the bills, who do you think would then be liable to maintain the area if it was a reserve?
Let's put it this way. Sorry, councillor. I don't believe the trust will fail or ever fail, basically because there's just too many people who are actually interested in this area and actually enhancing it for future generations and themselves to enjoy.
Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Look, thank you for the submission, sir. Look, on what basis do you assert that Forrester Heights at one point had a reserve designation? Who so designated it, when, and what's the evidence for the council changing its status to endowment in 2013?
I actually got it off Google, so I'll just get a bit of paper out. I thought the question may come out to you.
Just for clarity, are you aware that the endowment status is a consequence of an act of parliament passed by both Labor and National, and in fact everyone in the House with the exception, I think, of some or all of the Green Party?
This was in 2013, sir?
About that time, yes. So it wasn't the council that did that at all.
The council must have requested it in the first place. And I believe it was done by the then mayor of the time or his council, Mr. McCoy. And from what I've heard, rumoured, that it was to, I think it might be in here actually, which I got it off the net, that it was to help pay for some of the bills for the Opera House.
If I can just go back to that and just to shorten this a little. Essentially, the development was done, resource consent was issued and so on, and it was quite a few of the sections were signed up. At that point, it was, so there was some difference of opinion about what the status of the land was, and what had ended up happening was it went through to Parliament for them because they needed to sort it out as to what it was. Various submissions were made. Decision was made by Parliament that it is a endowment property with, for the financial benefit of the community. So it was initiated by council, but it was Parliament that decided. So that's the background to that. In 1937, I believe, whether or not it's true, and no doubt the councillors are no longer here after 1937, they'll be all up and but anyway, it ended up in the reserve. People may love it, majority of people. Council here, like myself, we've got a limited time left before we pass away.
we've got to look at the future, not just ourselves. Oamaru is growing and there's a distinct there's a distinct necessity for additional lands for green areas, for people to use for walkways, you know, picnics, etc. But particularly when you consider we've been 2 years in lockdown, we haven't been allowed to travel very far from our district. As a matter of fact, we've been boxed in our districts for quite a period of time. And these areas have been very useful to maintain people's health as well and welfare. Now we've got bloody monkeypox as well, which God knows it's probably jumped out of one of these research centres that are used for biological warfare. And we've got another problem on our hands, and who knows what's going to happen. We can't tell what the future is. We've got wars in Ukraine. We've got all sorts of problems, whereas New Zealanders probably won't be able to travel very far overseas safely anyway. So green areas and areas for walking, for it's essential that we make sure that both for ourselves and for future generations this stay available. If Hickley Park had been, you know, cut little bits off here and there, the people of Christchurch would be worse off.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it absolutely supports the comments about making sure that we've got reserves where they serve people, where they can walk to them. Because if you've got monkeypox going around, you probably don't want to be hopping on a bus to go have to drive to a reserve. But just on the bus thing, I mean, we're talking with the regional council. For some reason, Parliament in the day decided that regional councils were responsible for public transport. Local government, district councils would be responsible for putting the bus stops in, but the buses would be run by the regional council. So we're talking with them about, you know, getting a proper public bus service in Oamaru and into adjoining areas and so on. But so far, yeah, we haven't got that, succeeded with that. But when we do, that'll help provide access for everybody to all of the facilities that we do have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to say we probably should encourage people to talk a bit more to their neighbours so they can do a bit of carpooling occasionally when they go out for a walk and take them along. A bit of love to the neighbour wouldn't go amiss.
Good advice, Hendrickas. Thank you very much for coming along and making your submission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for listening to me. I hope you got an alternative view. You might not agree with me, but we've got to let you know how the, you know, quite a large number of people in Oamaru who love the place feel about it and what we'd like to see the way it develops in the future.
No, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, councillors, so if we head back to the second attachment and make sure I'm on the right one. So if we go to number 18 on page 71. Hello. All right, welcome along. Well, yeah, I get nervous every time I turn up. Don't worry about that. Anyway, June, welcome along. Thank you very much for your submission. Take a seat, and yeah, when you're ready to go, just turn the microphone on and go for it.
I'm not normally a public speaker, so just pardon me if I have any hiccups.
That's fine.
Thanks.
Just pop your microphone on, and you're all good.
Is that all right?
Yep.
Oh, gosh. The reason I wanted to speak is because I'm a fairly new person to Oamaru, been here 3 years. I've lived abroad for a long, long time. And so I think I bring a perspective maybe that more local people don't see, and that have seen what's happened in other places in the world. I've seen how councils have made decisions in the past and the consequences years down the track. And so I felt strongly that I didn't want this piece of land to be residential or sold off, because it's part of what I consider the heart of Oamaru. And what attracted my husband and I to come to Oamaru from living in England for 16 years was its history and what it had to offer in the way of just the buildings and the whole ambience of the place, so that you experience it when you walk down into the precinct, and you have the feeling of a place, you have the feeling of the history. Sure, you can read about it in books, but to actually be in a place and feel it. And I feel the same about the whole Cape and the whole area. It's got, it's all part of what I call the heart of Oamaru, the core. And so any town that I've seen or city, it spreads out over the years, over hundreds of years in Europe. And so you have your newer parts, and that's all great. But I don't think you should sacrifice the old historic parts of any towns or cities just for the sake of money, because the money might seem a lot at the time, but 10 years down the track, it's all been spent, and you're back to square one, and that the council's always wanting higher rates. They've never got enough money, and so the money that you got is very short-lived. So I wanted to compare the Oamaru Gardens and what was done 150 years ago, when they allocated 34 acres of swamp, which is now the Oamaru Gardens. And I wanted to liken that and what was done with that to the area up that we're talking about, the Harbour Hill, or what's it called? Yes. So I wanted to say that those people in those days, they had this foresight to, okay, we'll put aside some land. And I've seen a picture of that land, and it was just like a swamp with a little creek running through it. And yet over the years, with council and dedication from interested parties, those people built up this wonderful garden that was just a treasure. And I mean, I just love the place. And to me, it's made my stay in Oamaru. I go there every week. I spend a lot of time there, spring, summer, winter, it changes, it's wonderful. Now, those people who set that all up and worked over the years never probably saw it the way it is today, but they were instrumental in creating it. And I just want to say that that area up there is all part of the Cape, the foreshore, the precinct, and you can sit on Friendly Bay and look up there, and if it becomes a forest, which we'd like to see it over the years, native forest, well then the pleasure of sitting there and the whole place comes together. I just can't see the short-sightedness of selling it off and having residential, because the whole world is becoming suburbia, and I don't think it should happen here in Oamaru. It doesn't have to happen because we've got plenty of space. Was that Ting 3 minutes?
It was 4.
4 minutes. So anyway, that's my opinion, and I just wanted to put it forward.
No, we appreciate that, June, and thank you for that. And you're right, you know, we never have enough money, but it's not, we don't have enough money to do the things we want. It's we don't have enough money to do the things the community wants, and it's that challenge that we have. How do we achieve more? How do we actually make sure that, you know, what the forefathers have done around providing reserves? How, you know, we don't want it to stop. We want it, okay, how do we extend those reserves and actually make more reserves than what we've got now as our community expands? How do we make sure that we look after
It's a
all of
special
the
place,
community.
isn't it? That's a special place. And that you can't, I mean, there's plenty of other places for reserves, but that area there, that whole area to me is the old part of Oamaru. And that's why I'm strongly in favour of keeping that land.
Yeah, no, look, I totally appreciate where you're coming from with that.
If I could do anything at all, even speaking for 5 minutes, well, then I've done my little bit.
Yeah. No, thank you for
Okay.
that. Do we have any, Councillor Hopkins has a question for you.
Thank you.
If you just turn your microphone off.
Off?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the submission. I note your comment about the people who built the gardens, drained the swamps and created the gardens, and you identified them as having foresight. Would you also think that those who set aside that piece of land up there in the 1880s, 1860s as endowment land, did they also have foresight when they called it endowment land and drew up subdivision plans for that very site that we've been talking about now? Was that foresight as well?
Are you talking about the gardens, the foresight of putting aside? You're now talking about Forrester Heights. Well, as I understood it, it was reserve.
So
And an act of Parliament.
Never been reserved, ever. Officially, it has never been.
Well, I read that it was reserve and an act of Parliament by, I think the council approached Jackie Dean to pass that now became endowment land. I read that that's what happened.
It was a clarification that council sought from Parliament because there was two interpretations when it said this is reserved for the benefit of the community, and it was taken as a reserve for the benefit of the community.
Yes.
Parliament decided.
So it was a confusion. I mean, yeah.
So it was.
But then the council have been instrumental in changing that to actually say endowment. And I might be skeptical in thinking that, okay, they've done that for a reason, because that now allows them to sell it off if they need to. If it was reserved, they couldn't. Am I right in thinking that?
Not really. I mean, equally, you could say, well, an earlier council made the mistake of thinking it was a reserve because of the wording. So, so that's why it went to the highest court in the land, which is Parliament. And
that's right. But I mean, you know, it was submitted and purposely changed, and I think it was changed because obviously the council wanted to have more control over what happened to it. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that, I'm not even thinking about whether it's endowment or whether it's reserve. I just think whatever it is, we should keep it and not sell it. That's my main point. I do not want that land to be sold into public ownership to build houses.
No.
That's my main point.
Totally get your point.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming in, Jim.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. Hope we weren't too daunting for you. Thank you. Most of us, yeah. Okay. How are we going for time? So if we go to next one, number 19. That is Peter Plunkett. You've got the same version of as me. Okay, so we'll just wait for, hopefully.
Mr. Chair, it's got Trevor Jones in the waiting room. He's next on Zoom.
Hello, Peter. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Do you need this on?
Yes. Yeah. Only if you want people to hear you.
Well, yeah, I feel like I can speak loud enough, but anyway.
Yeah, it's for the people online as well. So
Yeah,
otherwise
okay.
they won't hear you.
Okay, thank you. Look, I am not really very well prepared here because I've been busy and I haven't had as much time as I would have liked to have actually prepared a bit more of this, but so this will probably be a little bit short, but there's only a couple of things I'd like to sort of talk on a little bit, and then one of them I was interested in. I have spoken to several people here at the market, and because of the time factor, I didn't get a chance to research that volume, which Joshua somewhere would have had you folks had at the market with the full, it looked like the major documentation to do with this case, right? And near the end of it was that issue where there'd been a report by whether it was from Joshua or somebody in the property group or something that presented you council, and the option of it becoming a reserve was identified as a high risk option, you know, and I would have liked to have had an explanation for that. I think I spoke to Jim about it. I didn't really get anything. Didn't get a satisfactory explanation, but that's in the past.
Well, if I could just quickly address it,
Yeah, sure.
I believe it was given that because we could spend a lot of time and effort to progress that and not have it happen. So that was probably the risk element of that.
I mean, I'm sure you're correct or something, but I mean, it does appear to be opinions that suggest it's not that difficult. So I don't know, you know, where is the truth? You know, is it, you know, I don't know, because I think the people that, well, the stuff I've seen, some stuff there, that people try to suggest that it isn't that difficult. See, so I mean, it does make me think that, you know, perhaps there is somewhere in the middle, which then makes the high risk option a little bit, you know, and to me, the high risk thing, see, and I think it fits in a little bit with this, and I think there's been people mentioned that this was would have appeared to this, you know, this form would have appeared to like be not particularly user friendly for somebody who wasn't interested in it being sold. You know, I mean, particularly the phrase, obviously, try to make it a reserve. You know, that the phrase in which I know didn't show up in the book was not the word that was used, but the try to was the bit that, you know, I was kind of thought, and I struck some people. I mean, I spoke to you, Gary, at the market, and I helped. I'm not a member of the Friends of the Harbour, but I did help them several times down there just to. And you and I spoke at length about the visitors that were prepared to fill forms in without any coercion on my behalf. And one particular group of people, these women from Waimate, who you'll find in this list here, took offence to the word try, and were prepared to think that they felt that the wording was enough to make them fill out you know, they felt as if there was a negative connotation on that alone. You know, like and I, you know, so. To me, all of these things sort of tie in to make it look like the option you folks want is to sell it, you know. But anyway, so that's one thing that I was unhappy about. The visitors I spoke about, and you and I spoke at this, we had a conversation about this a little bit, and I appreciate your point of view, but because you suggested they were here to perhaps look at the buildings, not to look at a reserve, you know. In my opinion, that's kind of possibly, you know, that is true, obviously, although we don't know why they were here. They could have been here for a multitude of reasons, you know. But what I'd like to suggest is that visitors in the future might come and have a look at a reserve, you know. I mean, if this was kept a reserve, you know, developed at some point in the future, I think it's quite likely that this could become part of the whole Cape could be, you know, in reality should become some sort of little indigenous biodiverse island, you know, in a similar way to Orokonui, but totally different, obviously, because it's a totally different habitat. But, you know, I think that's what New Zealand's going to need in the future to ensure that its indigenous stuff remains. You're going to need islands like that. Well, I'd call it an island, you know. And at that point, I think it would then become a visitor attraction, could become a visitor attraction. That would tie in, obviously, with the, you know, the penguin people. You know, I mean, they're looking for things to administer. Sounds like my time might be almost up. Hey, I just want to read this out here. This was actually my feedback. It says, making the so-called Forrester Heights area reserve is the best long-term option for the community. This would allow the area to be revegetated with native species, which would in turn be in alignment with the draft national policy statement on Indigenous biodiversity, which I'm sure you people will become aware, you know, in the next few years. You know, I'm surprised there hasn't been some input with the Targa Regional Council on this, to be honest, because it looks to me, my reading of it looks like they're going to be administering that, and I would, through every urban territorial.
We are as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think, you know, but hey, I'm surprised they're not involved in this, you know, to be honest. And this, as I've said before, this area in conjunction with the rest of the Cape Wombrau could eventually be a tourist attraction in its own right, in a similar vein to the Orokonui Eco Sanctuary. The sale of this property would be extremely short-sighted, in my opinion. So thank you very much for listening to that, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And just a quick couple of comments. I think, yeah, the try word is in there because we can go through the process and we can't guarantee that it will become a reserve because it's not our decision. So that's why it's try. It's not like, you know, it's impossible, but we don't want to say it's guaranteed either. So that was the only thing there. And I think, you know, as far as the Cape goes, I think we are all totally on board with it becoming an island of biodiversity, of Indigenous biodiversity.
Yep.
You know, that is what we want, whether it's got the Forrester Heights bill 2.5 hectares as well or not, is obviously what this
Yeah,
is
well,
about.
I mean, I didn't obviously get a chance to think because that national policy statement is talking about 10% of urban territory becoming Indigenous, you know, so I would suggest we might be struggling with that amount, you know, without this would be a chance to.
Peter, thank you.
Off, yeah, sorry.
Do you know when the draft national policy statement on Indigenous biodiversity, which was about the 4th or 5th iteration thereof, do you know when it was promulgated?
No.
2018. And 4 years later, it still hasn't been turned into an actual binding national policy statement. So do you think it would be wise to rely on things that aren't actually law?
My reading of it was that it was going to be enacted by adopted by 2028 or in 2028. So I appreciate it's a long lead in. 10 years is a fairly long time, but I would suggest to you that it is coming. You know, I mean, it's only, you know, it's a valid point, but you know, there is documentation. I think there are people working on it at the moment. I'm sure the regional council is struggling, but you know, but anyway, thank you.
No, thank you. And, you know, we've got the opportunity to, with some land at Palmerston to actually make a biodiversity reserve there as well. And, you know, we are looking at these opportunities around the district because we are much more than just Oamaru, but yeah, it's trying to do it in an affordable way. But, you know, yeah, we want great spaces for our people.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we've got, who's the next person? Trevor Jones is online. So just connecting through at the moment. Just wait for that to happen.
Problem with the draft policy statement.
So, Trevor, hello. Still showing it's connecting to audio. So won't be able to, oh yeah, there we go. So welcome along, Trevor. You're just muted, but the unmute and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, I just wanted to this one shouldn't take too long. I just quickly wanted to say that I would very much, I think the reserve is a great area and I think it's something we should take a great deal of care of. But also in saying that, I'd like to see the whole area move forward. And one of the things that I wondered is whether it was possible for us to come up with a local planning code or bylaw that actually said, yes, if you built in that area, you can build in that area, but you have to conform to these requirements. And these requirements would need to be that you use Oamaru stone, that the buildings were small enough and fitted in with our local heritage, and so that the buildings were more of a Victorian theme to them, and yet very modern materials. I can't see any reason why we couldn't just slowly move down Test Street very gently just to show how it could work out. And there are a whole variety of different sort of buildings we could build. Maybe even it's a kind of an area where crafts and people like that could work, and you could have residential accommodation over the top. Should we sell those properties, they should definitely be at a premium. Okay, so that land should definitely be at a premium. I'd like to see the money go from there to create a market area behind the Scottish Hall because that's going to cost a fair amount of money to tidy it all up and make it work, and they might have to move a few people to do that. But having our Sunday market area there would really pull the centre together. It would pull the heritage area and Thames Street nicely, and would offer a whole range of things that would work for lots of different organisations, I think. All right. As well as that, it would be very nice to see footpaths going out to Bushy Beach from Test Street, Avon Street, okay, and then from round there to Beach Road, so that there are lots of circuits that people could use to keep fit and keep healthy. Once we turn the little council dwelling in the park into a cafeteria, we could then perhaps change the gun emplacements to another cafeteria at a later date. All right, just somewhere here. And that's it, guys. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you very much. All right, councillors, have we got any questions or feedback? Councillor Thompson. Well, we'll go to the Deputy Mayor then.
Thank you for your comments. I'm just wondering, you've mentioned the squash club. Are you a member or anything, or do you know if the squash club were wanting to move? Because I understood through our discussions with the event centre they were keen to stay where they were. Just, yeah, interested in your thoughts.
Heath, thank you very much for that question. I'm not a member. I don't know what the squash club are doing. I understand they've invested a lot in there. It is a logical fit for the community for them to be at the sports centre. And I know the sports centre is well funded, so that could be a possibility. But I don't know that we have to use their building. The sports hall, sorry, the Scottish Hall provides somewhere inside to be used for those wet, miserable days when none of us quite like going down there, but still do. And the area behind all the buildings would just remain, is more protected than the current site that we've got. You're welcome.
Okay. No, Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor, for your submission. And I know from talking to you in the past that you're a very creative thinker, and you've thrown some other different new ideas into our pool.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if you could hear me or not. Yes, indeed. So thank you for that. And so yeah, what you were thinking about selling then is only selling part of the area known as Forrester Heights, not developing the whole area for housing. Was that what you were saying? Just you slowly develop some of it and then use those funds to do the other projects that you mentioned?
I think that I don't know that there's any need to go through and sell all of it all at once. Okay, that actually moving through slowly might just be a simple way to find out whether we can come up with a model that allowed us to do what we would like to do with the area.
Okay, thanks very much, Trevor, for joining us online. Appreciate you taking the time to make the submission and to come and speak to us. Well, Zoom in. So thank you very much for that.
It's the least I could do, and I hope you all come to a good decision in the end.
Thank you.
Good luck to you, because you've got an awful lot of work to do, you guys.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, next we have Jay on that. So hi, Jay. Good to see you. So submission number 22. So make sure everyone's on the right page. Anyway, the floor is yours. Just start the mic when you're ready to go.
Okay. I wasn't really prepared with what to say, but I really just kind of wanted to show up and back up what I filled out in the form that I completed when you guys were at the market. I think actually just before I came here today, I was above the Cape and I was looking out and there's someone paragliding along there and it looks so amazing. But it just reminded me, my point was that the Cape is just such a valuable asset to Oamaru in so many ways. And I would want to make sure that whatever happens, that's added on to rather than taken away from, I think is my point. And that if it isn't able to be a yes and situation in terms of property and some walkways and some extra bike tracks and access to the Cape and things like that, that there was probably my lean would be towards more active space than filling it up with houses. But I think that you could do both. Yeah. And I think that would be really important. I've spent the last couple of years traveling all around New Zealand and living in different places for 6 weeks to 6 months. And one of the things that a lot of the cities and smaller suburbs as well have going for them are the walkways between neighbourhoods and the community spaces where people who perhaps live by themselves can connect, and where there's extended tracks. And I can just see, like, it would be awesome to be able to walk from here to the Cape and have quite clear, you can now, but have quite clear tracks, you know, and add on to that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, councillors, questions, councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mick. Thanks, thanks for the submission. On your general feedback, the type piece that we have, you talk about, you say you'd love to see some small amount of funds go into the care of other walking tracks in town that are undervalued and unknown. And I'm just wondering which ones you have identified are undervalued and or unknown.
I think there's a bunch of, I have conversations with people all the time about the certain tracks and where they start or where they go or how long they are. And just maybe, I haven't actually of recent been around these tracks, so things may have changed or been updated. But even just, and there may also be a reference as to where these tracks are and perhaps how long they take and that sort of thing. And maybe a bit more promotion around what is available. Yeah, because I think it's so important for those of you that do know me, like mental health and physical wellness is really, really important, but it's also community building. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, for that submission. And I love your idea of having a dedicated or a very clear walking track from town up to the Cape. And the last submitter just said over to Bushy Beach as well. So it's a great idea. And I'm not asking a question, I'm just saying I support you totally in that. It sounds a marvellous idea.
Anyone else? No, all good. So thank you very much for taking the time to not only make the submission, but also to come in and speak to it. So appreciate it. Thank you. Right. So next we've got Roger McCoy. So he's just being brought in. Submission number 23. Afternoon, Roger.
Afternoon.
So good to see you. So if you wish, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, just when you're ready, push the button and on the microphone and away you go.
Yes, all right. Good afternoon, Waitaki District Councillors. I'd like to speak on 3 issues. First, stability. Second, safety. And the third, to sum up, will be sort of financial. Now, I'd like to blow that fake news myth apart that the land is unstable and there's underrunners and it's going to collapse into the sea, because as you've read from my report there that I wrote, you know, I've lived there for 35 years. In fact, I've done quite a bit of scientific research on my property because I've dug out a car park of 12 by 9, 108 square metres. And I didn't do it all at once. I've done it gradually. I did a few dump truck loads and got one space and then 2, and then a few years later a bit more. And the bank went back a bit further. So I lived for about 15 years with the clay bank about 15 metres from the house, and I could monitor it. And there's a about 12 metres from, sections about 22 metres wide. So more or less 2/3 of the way across was an underrunner. And I used to watch the water come down through there from both sides. And sometimes in a big storm, the wee bits of clay would fall off, and you think, what a mess. But when I, got a couple of wheelbarrow loads to clean it up, there wasn't much clay. It looks worse than it is, just like down by Waterfront Road like we had the last big storm in July 2017 when North Otago had 264 millimetres in 24 hours, and I had quite a bit of a subsidence then. And so that's when I got my retaining wall in. And now that the retaining wall's up, it's great. And the great thing I found about living on a hillside, digging in just in the same bit of land, is that you can transfer it down the front. So I've gained 108 square metres at the back side of the house. And then at the front, where it's sloped down, I've put another retaining wall in and filled it in and gained 20 by 6 square metres. So that's what can be done on a hillside like Forrester Heights, which I think is a very good name and I'm fully in favour of developing it for some form of residential or commercial, maybe a blend of the two. We've got to think. My term is, I borrow it from one of our most famous prime ministers who I admired, was Sir Robert Muldoon. And I got caught up in those years in the late 70s, early 80s with the Think Big project. So that's what I'd like the Waitaki District Council to think of this as a golden opportunity, and we've got to think big about it and get a big return for that very, very valuable little bit of land that it is, highly prized. And thinking big means on an international stage. I like the name Forrester Heights with the Forrester and the architecture, and I can visualise, grand houses built there, like the one that's just been built down T Street there, a variety. And, it would be great to think big and not just attract a few millionaires from Auckland, but from overseas. We're going to talk about billions nowadays. And here's a golden opportunity to fund the event centre with some land, either by housing or with a grand hotel. I prefer a Hilton. Imagine the Oamaru Hilton. There's actually 7 Hiltons in New Zealand at the present point in time. Oamaru could get the drop on Invercargill and Dunedin, and we could get a Hilton hotel before them. Now, what I'd like to speak about from the safety is that it's a desirable urban area. There's valuable houses. Mine's over $1 million property. All the houses on that area on the South Hill, and they're building new ones further up, they're all at least $1 million properties. We don't want to be at risk of fire. There was a fire just down the road there about 4 years ago. That bit of bush went up. I've roamed over that in my youth, and I've run all over Cape Wombrowse, explored that. It's too steep for anything. People are talking about a recreational reserve and all sorts, turning it into a forest. That is the worst outlook possible, to have a forest next to an urban environment with valuable houses. We've seen it in our own district a few years ago in Lake Ohau when the whole village went up. I've just seen it 2 weeks ago on TV with that part in Southern California, where I used to live in 1980 for 6 months when I was a contractor for the US Navy there. I got the 3rd Fleet, and I was on a rugby tour, so I had that work life experience. And that topography of Southern California in the North Pacific is exactly the same as here in the South Pacific and right here where we're talking about. And those fires that raged through that wealthy neighbourhood, the wind from the sea over there, we call it a northeasterly here, so I suppose it's the opposite, it'll be a westerly or whatever. And it blew in those canyons. It's the same topography, and you don't want to see that here in Oamaru by allowing a forest to be built there. And you'll notice at the end of my comments, I said a forest can be home to miscreants and people of no fixed abode. And believe me, I've seen that already. Years ago when the trees were there, I've seen some hobo types light campfires there above, close there, several of them. And I've also seen in Dunedin where people like that live close to the Murray and behind the Kingston Tavern. So it could happen there. We don't want that. So I implore you to think about selling that bit of land or developing it for all residential and or commercial in a way, and or half commercial and half residential. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Roger. You've kind of run out of time, but I'll just see if there's a quick question from anybody. No, very thorough.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to make the submission and come in.
Okay, farewell.
Yes. Okay. On to number 24. So next is Judith Murray-Stevenson.
It's the one you're missing so far. You're
Yeah.
backwards.
Hi Judy, how are you? Good, very good, thanks. Welcome along. So we've read the submission and so on, but no, we didn't read you. That was the one we haven't read. So we didn't get the written version attached to this. So feel free to cover off any points you want. We will get that before we do any decision making. But yeah, go for it. Okay, so just switch the mic on and away you go.
Okay. Well, thank you all for letting us have a say. I am going to name and shame down now because some of us did try long ago in April to have a say, but no go. So it's great that over 900 and you let us have a say. Yes, they said it was a paper shortage, but there's actually quite a few of us are getting quite brassed off that we're not getting a say. It's not just council, but it's paper-wise. But I'm here to give you carrots, not stick. But they seem to be able to print all the court news and the $55 million public interest journalism thing. It's not getting through to a certain group of people, but we're doing emails, not social media. We're doing emails. Anyway, I'm here as constructive criticism. I've done all that constructive stuff in there so you can read it. But basically, now urban creep, up, right out, but do it with care. I have a high garage going next door, and you wouldn't credit the angst that is causing. And we're going for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people, especially the kids of town. I sat and looked at Forrester Heights the other day from the sports bar car park. It does get a lot of sun. Most of the sun of New Zealand online. It's the last to lose it. So I divided that area into thirds, starting from the east, the left. So the first third I put down for action. Now that I know is not Queenstown. They used to claim they were the venture capital of the New Zealand, and then it became the adventure capital of New Zealand. The penguins are still being out there. And Julie and I used to, while we waited for the penguins, I used to design the whole harbour while we were waiting. With the couriers, we had a climbing wall. Or you can do abseiling. You can still have your zip line floating down to the hotel. Or the small pontoon's gone now as well. The kids get them off their laptops and from making those black tiles all over our road, black tile notes. bike trail could be there, the cross-country one, it's all about it in there. The middle third could be forest and bird, the calm, the bird song, the owls, the carbon farming, the edibles, the natives, the bikes as well, and for walking. Okay, the third, the tourism one. There was a bit of overlap with them all, but that's why I'm going on about the Omo song, like Aotearoa. Or the Matariki, we could have a Matariki lookout. Or somebody said ways. Walking tracks, it's for the views. There could be a bit of the history there. Although I never mentioned Forrester's name, Tom and John gave Omo a lot of money, a lot of buildings, a lot of stuff, but no, they never mentioned it. It's unique. Come on, we're going to have to compete with these tourist towns when the tourism gets off again. So in conclusion, I say, okay, council, you can kick the can down the road a bit more. It's too expensive to change from endowment to reserve if you've got to go to debt payment. It's not the time to do it. We've been overtaken by all sorts of things. But that's enough negativity. I will get on my bike, always in my frame, and toddle off into the future.
Thank you very much. And we've been emailed around your full submission, so we have got that now. All I'd say is that I don't think any homes, if they were to be built on Forest Heights, would be larger than Harbourview Home, as depicted in the image you've sent through. So, yeah, it's hard to believe that there would be any houses built there bigger than Harbourview.
It's huge.
So anyway, thank you very much. We've got, I'm sure, a very interesting question from Councillor Hopkins. You just turn your microphone off for the moment.
Right hand, bud.
Yep.
Well, I hope it's interesting. Judith, thank you very much for that. I just want to clarify, you said at the end, it's too expensive now to change from endowment to reserve. Although you had been talking to us about 1/3 action, 1/3 forest and bird, 1/3 tourism. So do I take it that you're saying, don't make it an official, don't go through the costly time-consuming process of making it an official reserve, but essentially leave it as it is or develop it in some ways along the lines you've suggested. Is that your ultimate position?
Yeah. We don't want to lose it in the future. Like, I know it's cost you a lot to actually go through this performance. I prefer a reserve, sure, but sorry, this government at the moment is really causing problems. So keep away from it, but maybe in the future, go back to reserve. Yeah, reserve first.
Councillor Wolstein.
Yeah, thanks, Judy, for your comments. Interesting, your idea of a third. Just a quick question on your last third of tourism. Just an Oamaru sign, nothing else on that third of it? It's a big area of land just to have a sign on.
Well, maybe you could frame it in trees. Like, we were going for Photinia shrubs, which are that red and green, lovely colour that change. And we could still frame it. You could, put frame and have a few trees as well. But we need something unique, something different. And that,
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time. And yes, you certainly did send through quite a few images as well with the submission. So we'll go through all those. But thank you. Thanks for coming in. Right, councillors, we'll got a wee bit of time before the next one so we can get on with some of the other submissions. So if we can go to number 29. And 26 not complete. So number 29, Ting Ren. So, any comments? No. Okay. So then through to number 44. Yeah, I don't know. I'm giving up trying to find page numbers.
If you add about 10 to the number, the page number that appears here on our sheet, you get it about right, to be honest.
So
What one again now, Gary?
number 44, Hunter White. So Hunter's from Oamaru Intermediate School. Any comments from that?
This is G White on this.
Okay, then the next one is 64.
That's on the place.
Alan McClay, yep. So any comments? Okay, then 65. We'll find that straight after it. Brett Evington. No comments. So then let's zoom all the way through to number 66.
Well,
66. Yeah. So we just it's all right. So that was Catherine Harvey's. Councillor Hopkins, you having conniptions over there?
No, well, look, it's just there is a theme that's coming through that probably we have to have a conversation, I think, with the community to some extent. And you know, the second sentence here. In fact, we are losing land to the sea. Yes, but not in and around the harbour, and certainly not halfway up hillsides, and to developers. Well, we don't lose land to developers. People develop land because it's available to be developed, and all the people who are complaining about development are in fact the beneficiaries of it, because they all live in houses that have been developed. Once upon a time, it was bare land. Once upon a time, there were no people on this part of the world, on the planet at all. Then humans arrived, and they brought with them a whole raft of abstractions like property and title and all these sorts of things, and freehold title, which people have then developed. So we wouldn't have a town with or without reserves if it weren't for developers and development.
Councillor Wolfstein.
Yeah, I just think I think Catherine, as a retired farmer, is probably with her losing land to developers, probably more thinking about the land around the environs of Oamaru, which is being farmland, which is being lost to developers. You know, lost in terms of being developed into lifestyle blocks, etc. So and that's my interpretation of what she was referring to. And I think a lot of other submitters have made similar comments about the valuable farmland having concrete put down, houses built on good farmland. So question is, do you build on land in town which is producing nothing, or do you build on good farmland around the outskirts of Oamaru? Question many submitters raised.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk to our community around that. I think that's what this has been about. I think you can have a little bit of faith that people understand what they're trying to tell us. They might look at things differently to what you do, but I think we take it at face value rather than kind of try and call it out and say we need to talk to our community around whether or not they understand what developers taking land actually means.
Okay, next one is number 67, Jeffrey Tobin. I do, you know, this is one where I would say, I mean, the idea is that land can be replaced. You won't get that bit of land back, and that's obviously an important point that people want to make, but equally it can be replaced, and that's certainly one of the options is actually extending the reserves that we have and creating more, but where it's actually going to serve people. So that's probably just the only comment I make on that one. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that. I mean, the theme has come up a few times now that we're looking at this as a really short-term thing. Like this particular one mentions we shouldn't be selling it for short-term cash. Short-term cash, like, insinuates that we've only got a short-term view, but I'd like to just reassure everyone that we are looking at it with a much longer-term view, and a very balanced opinion in mind. It's not just the cash that you can get from selling the actual land. Potentially there is an economic benefit from building on that land, potentially. So we're looking at it more broad-mindedly than that.
Thank you. Sure. So we got Zim Sherman,
Zim Sherman
online. So yes. So number 28. Okay, so right, welcome Zim. Good to see you online.
Hi, can everybody hear?
Yeah, no, we can hear you good as gold. So if you just, when you're ready to go, you just go for it, and we'll ask questions afterwards.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Zim Sherman, not sure when, but Sherman. And I'm against the disposal of this endowment land, primarily because it is endowment land. And I get the feeling that the word endowment isn't well understood. The council's webpage links to a Supreme Court case that debates the meaning of endowment, and it actually determines that endowment land is land held to produce income. So if you read the case, the emphasis is on the word held. The land must be held as it generates income. When the word endowment applies to charities and private universities and things like that, gifts to the endowment go into a fund, and that fund is never spent. It's invested safely, and the revenue comes from the interest and the dividends that are earned by that fund. The endowment itself is kept intact pretty much forever. And that's the legal meaning of the word endowment. So in the case of Forrester Heights, years ago, the land was leased for grazing. And grazing was consistent with endowment because when the grazing is done, the town still holds the land. Now the council infers that selling the land fulfills the terms of the endowment in aid of council funds. But this isn't correct. Councils can legally dispose of their endowments. It's not an easy process, but this is completely separate from the purpose of the endowment in aid of council funds. Selling the land to aid council funds doesn't fulfill the terms of the endowment. It destroys the endowment. Well, it's been a long time since it's aided council funds, right? So maybe this isn't the appropriate use anymore. The Local Government Act allows you to change the purpose of the endowment without disposing of the asset. Legally, endowments can be for any purpose. For example, parcel 2 of Forrester Heights itself is currently endowed for the general purposes of the town. So this doesn't require a fancy legal battle. Just follow me here. I originally thought that the council could create a reserve at Forrester Heights by invoking section 14 of the Reserves Act. I admit I was wrong. The council can't invoke the Reserves Act because Jackie Dean's Reserves and Other Land Empowering Act 2013 stripped the authority of all previous acts, including the Reserves Act. So in order to make it a reserve now, we might require another act of parliament. Thank you, Jackie Dean, for making this so difficult. But Jackie's Empowerment Act 2013 specifically put Forrester Heights under the authority of the Local Government Act. And this gives you an option to change the purpose of the endowment without any expensive legal procedure. Simply invoke section 140(4)(a)(1) of the Local Government Act. Ask the Minister of Local Government to change the purpose for which the property may be used. Change the purpose to something consistent with how the land is in use today. This can be recreation, scenic amenity, biodiversity, historical preservation, cultural heritage, whatever you want. These purposes all provide value to the town. Don't get hung up on the word reserve. Reserve has a very specific legal meaning, but it also has a common meaning. And I think that everyone in favor of creating a reserve would settle for this common meaning. An endowment for, say, biodiversity and scenic amenity would be just as good as a reserve. This solution retains the asset for the town. It doesn't require an act of parliament or even a lawyer. All it takes is a resolution by council and a signature from the Minister of Local Government. And that's my proposal, and I'm ready for questions.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, normally if we were to sell the land, the funds are tagged then, and if we buy something else with it, then that still has an endowment aspect to it. Would be the only comment that I would say. But I think some of your comments are very good and very helpful actually to us. So, around some of the other elements of that. So appreciate that. Now, councillors, any questions, comments? Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, hi Zim. Thanks for your submission and your comments you've just informed us of. I just see you note that you've raised the issue with the Office of the Honourable Ania Smith. You haven't had replies yet. Just thought I'd ask, have you had a reply so far?
No, she's pretty slow on the telephone, I think.
Okay, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Zim, thank you for this. I'm interested in the conclusion you draw that because the Local Members Bill in 2013 placed this endowment under the Local Government Act, that we can invoke section 144(a)(1). And basically we resolve and the Minister just rubber stamps with the signature. It may or may not be that easy. I have a horrible feeling that it probably won't turn out to be quite that easy, but I would actually, my question really is to Lisa, can it just be noted that I would like a specific response from officers on this point as part of the information we get, please?
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Well, thank you very much for the time you've taken on this. It's obviously been a reasonable amount of research and background work that you've done, so appreciate that, and you taking the time to actually join us here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher, and thank you to the council.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, councillors, right.
We cannot find Tara has not responded to several text items, so move on to him.
Um,
Yeah. 25, we cannot get hold of at the moment.
Right, so we can't get number 25. So we shall go. Yeah, there's no one out there, Judith? No, okay. Right. So can we head to number 68? Sorry to be bouncing around quite as much as this. If you go to the end of that appendix, attachment 2, and then go arrow back several, and you're right there. So we've got Georgia Jennings. Any comments there? Just waiting for a few to get onto the page.
68.
68, it's almost the last one. So if you go to the, if you can go to the end, then work back. Councillor Hopkins.
Well, I suppose a number of people now, this is a theme that's come through in submissions, the idea of hill and bush reserves and so forth, the carbon forest, plantings of that nature. Roger McCoy's submission did raise the issue of fire as a potential risk and cited the fact there had been a fire in Test Street 4 years ago. Again, I think I might just ask Lisa if there's any officer advice. Could we look at, could we ask officers for advice on this matter? Or even from fence, does this pose a fire risk? Or would such a forest potentially pose a fire risk so close to residences?
I mean, any forestry will, but if you plant the right natives, they're quite fire resistant. Don't plant Kanuka. So, it depends on what it is that you're planting, that's for sure. There's certainly experience gathered from Lake Orho. Right, anything else? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to make a comment. There's a lot of submission around the need of restoration of native habitat. We need to remind ourselves that we're actually dry land east coast, and we were not covered in thousands of hectares of native bush per se. It was limited to specific areas. So I support the idea of expanding our areas of native bush, but per se they're not actually native in some of these areas.
Not to want to challenge things now, because I think there'll be a time for us to do that. But also there's a lot of areas that have had native bush removed that are built on. So sometimes we might have to look elsewhere from where it once was. So I guess that's all part of the end argument.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things we've got to weigh up is how much do we put resources into these different bits of land versus, we've got Cape Wombrau, we've worked with communities worked with us, whatever, to plant some of that out. The sooner we can clear the pines off that and get it all fully planted out and used as a native biodiversity area, the better off we'll be. And, one of the questions I do have for the people who say, well, we would donate plants, we would go and help them. We've got a big bit of land that we're not keeping up with now. What help are people prepared to actually make towards that? Because, there's a great opportunity there to actually do a lot more quickly working together. Councillor Hopkins.
Also, not wishing to perpetuate the debate, if you look at the early artwork of Oamaru, there are no trees here. When European settlers arrived, the reason the town is built in stone is because they didn't have timber, which was the prime construction material throughout the rest of the country. Now, the fact that this area was so depopulated in terms of trees and the like, there's three possible explanations. One, it's always been that way. Two, natural calamities that cause extensive fires. Or three, human-induced fire as a hunting technique that may or may not have got out of control. So, but it is inescapably true that there were no trees in Oamaru and around Oamaru when European settlers came here, and presumably that would have been the case for some considerable time.
Okay, right, on to number 29, Murray Elliot. 69. Sorry, I'm looking at 20s on here, and right, any comments there? Number 69, Murray Elliot. Okay. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. I just note that Murray Elliot does say that he'd like to see mixed use and higher density. So by that, I wonder if he's means high-rise buildings, or is that talking about the hotels that Roger talked about? Without talking to Mr. Elliot, we don't know, but he certainly doesn't want it to be underutilised.
Deputy Mayor Tavendale.
There's quite a few like this. I think this one is the only one this way, but he's put on here that he strongly disagrees with selling some or all of the Forrester Heights land. But then when you look at the feedback, he's talking about mixed use and he's talking about close to town capacity of measure. So I feel like he's misunderstood the choice questions. I wonder if the ones that come up like that, we raise them and highlight them, because I think I found at least another 6 that were that way as well, that once you read the comments, you went back to the voting and thought maybe they misunderstood things. So that may just change the way things look.
Yeah, I think, I was taking that into account along the way, and because it worked both ways, and don't think they've actually ticked the one that matches what the wording is that they've put in there. I don't know if it's material enough to have staff go through. Would be my only comment. I think this is what we're taking on board, and yes, if it was a referendum and you needed to be right down to exactly how many were one way and how many were the other, you would do it, but this isn't a referendum.
I do still think it's helpful to have that information, so I just wonder if it's raised, because I have got them noted the whole way through, whether we could just keep a list of it, and what we do with that, we can make a decision at the end, but I think it's helpful information.
I agree with Mel in this case. What the response to the 3 questions is diametrically opposed to his argument. He says he strongly disagrees with selling some or all of Forrester Heights, and then says it's an area close to town that has capacity to house many residents. I'd like to see a mixed use and higher density so that many residents can live. Now, it's got to be one or the other. It cannot be both, because the two are contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah, my comment is that, how much time do we want to spend on that versus actually we're taking that on board overall. So that's all the only comment on that. We've got, it wasn't complete. So we've got 3 that we haven't done. We'll come back to those tomorrow as we get time. We're scheduled to finish now, so we will do that. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll be back with another live stream starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you.
It'll be better than Dancing with the Stars. It really will.